Chapter 601-Death and the Eye of the Divine Sea. The elder chief of the Flying Spirit clan was slain by Yi Chun with a single move, completely terrifying the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief who was standing by. The Vermilion Bird clan elder chief couldn't have imagined that he and the Flying Spirit clan elder chief's combined strike would be broken by Yi Chun and, at the same time, the Flying Spirit clan elder chief would be directly killed. The Flying Spirit clan elder chief was a powerhouse who had achieved the rank of a Nine Tribulation True God even before the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief had. His death at the hands of Yi Chun caused the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief's heart to instantly plummet into an abyss. The Vermilion Bird clan elder chief could feel that he absolutely could not withstand that streak of crimson light unleashed by Yi Chun, even if he were 1,000 times stronger. If that streak of crimson light had been shot at him instead of the Flying Spirit clan elder chief, he would have already been dead. The terror in his heart and the shock at facing an unbelievable, dreadful power left the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief's mind reeling in an instant. Now, having slain the Flying Spirit clan elder chief, Yi Chun certainly wouldn't miss the opportunity to also kill the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief. Whoosh! In the fraction of a moment, a fiery red light suddenly shot out from the Sword Palace acupoint between Yi Chun's eyebrows. The fiery red light instantly pierced through the void and streaked directly towards the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief. Seeing yet another attack of fiery red light, the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief was so scared that he rapidly retreated backwards. Only after retreating dozens of meters did he suddenly realize that this fiery red light was not as powerful as the crimson light that had killed the Flying Spirit clan elder chief. Crimson Fire Flying Sword. This is not the same killing move from before. It's a flying sword. The Vermilion Bird clan elder chief instantly reacted. With a great grab, a vast palm formed in the void and directly blocked the fiery red light. The fiery red light revealed its true form, and it was indeed a flying sword. Yi Chun's life-bound flying sword, Crimson Fire Flying Sword. The Crimson Fire Flying Sword was originally a Supreme Saint weapon. Since Yi Chun acquired the Void Heaven Sword embryo at the Grand Auction in the Heavenly Evolution continent, he had been nurturing the Crimson Fire Flying Sword with it. At this moment, the quality of the Crimson Fire Flying Sword had been nurtured by the Void Heaven Sword embryo from a Supreme Saint weapon to True God level. A True God level flying sword is exceedingly terrifying. Especially when wielded by Yi Chun, it could easily slay 6 and 7 Tribulation True Gods. Unfortunately, the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief was a 9 Tribulation True God and he still managed to block the Crimson Fire Flying Sword. Seeing the Crimson Fire Flying Sword blocked, Yi Chun wasn't the slightest bit surprised. In fact, before the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief even managed to block the Crimson Fire Flying Sword, Yi Chun had already launched his second killing move. He used the Crimson Fire Flying Sword, first to draw the already disturbed attention of the Vermilion Bird clan elder chief, precisely to execute his second killing move. And at this moment, Yi Chun's second killing move was finally unleashed. Clang! A sudden burst of sword cry echoed as Yi Chun's most powerful weapon, the Purple Lightning Divine Sword, was drawn. The moment this top-grade divine weapon, which could reach the level of a transcendent divine weapon with its unleashed sword techniques, was drawn, the vast star force within Yi Chun surged crazily into the Purple Lightning Divine Sword. At the same time, the immense battle forces from Yi Chun's cultivation of Undying Divine Body and Icebound Divine Body, along with his divine soul power, also all surged into the Purple Lightning Divine Sword. Last but not least, Yi Chun directly unleashed his never-before-used second sword technique of the Purple Lightning Divine Sword, the Extreme Lightning Move, back when Yi Chun was on the 13th level of the Undersea Divine Palace. He slaughtered countless true god beasts from the Flame Scorcher clan with the first sword technique, Purple Lightning, of the Purple Lightning Divine Sword. At that time, Yi Chun's combat strength was insufficient to activate the even more powerful second sword technique, Extreme Lightning. But now, after the months of arduous cultivation on the 21st level, his true chi had grown much vaster, and he could finally utilize the second of the 3 prohibitive sword techniques of the Purple Lightning Divine Sword. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, the entire sky erupted with endless, brilliant crimson light and lightning. The moment these brilliant crimson lights and lightning pierced through the void, they all shot towards the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder Chief. The Vermilion Bird Clan Elder Chief was already in complete disarray from the sudden death of the Flying Spirit Clan Elder Chief, and had just managed to block Yi Chen's crimson fire, flying sword in a hurry, still not fully recovered from the shock. Then, the next moment, he saw Yi Chen's new killing move already upon him. If these endless brilliant crimson lights and lightning had come when he was at his peak, he might have been able to withstand them. But now, with his heart and soul already shaken, he found himself frozen on the spot in the next moment, facing the dreadful divine sword's prohibitive sword technique. And in the moment of life and death, the most brilliant and endless crimson light and lightning in the sky reached their peak splendor and instantaneously converged at an inconceivable speed, forming an extremely bright flash of electrical light. Thump! In the moment the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder was dazed, streaks of extreme lightning pierced through his body. Facing the imminent danger of death, the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder snapped back from his horror. He had barely thought to muster his divine power when he felt the extreme lightning that had surged into his body completely annihilate all his divine power into nothingness. It even obliterated his entire body into nothingness. The Vermilion Bird Clan Elder's gaze only saw his entire form disintegrating. His divine power shattered, and then, amid an expression of shock and astonishment, he thunderously fell. Following the death of the Flying Spirit Clan Elder, the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder was also killed by Yi Chen. Thud! 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 Finally, like the Flying Spirit Clan Elder before, the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder dropped the 5 newly acquired Eyes of Creation, along with other treasures, scattering them on the ground. The Vermilion Bird Clan Elder himself, however, was thoroughly dead, turned into nothingness. Originally, 3 had entered the Yubao Hall, but now only Yi Chen was left. Phew! Seeing the Flying Spirit Clan Elder and Vermilion Bird Clan Elder killed, completely turned into nothingness, Yi Chen also placed the purple lightning divine sword on the ground, gasping for breath deeply. He had killed the Flying Spirit Clan Elder with Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, without expending any effort. However, when he saw the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder become dumbfounded at the death of the Flying Spirit Clan Elder, a thought flashed through Yi Chen's mind. Perhaps, facing the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder who was now panicked and disordered, it might not be necessary to expend another Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. After all, Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill only had 3 opportunities for slaughter, and Yi Chen did not wish to waste 2 of them so quickly. With this thought in his heart, Yi Chen instantly took advantage of the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder's stunned state to unleash the Crimson Fire, Flying Sword, and the second forbidden move of the Purple Lightning Divine Sword, the Extreme Lightning Sword technique, which nearly depleted all his combat strength. While executing these 2 moves, Yi Chen also tightly held back the maneuvers of Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, prepared to unleash the second move in case the situation turned dire. Unexpectedly, Yi Chen's plan worked. The mentally disordered Vermilion Bird Clan Elder, who had only recently stepped into the true god level, was killed outright by the Extreme Lightning technique. Yi Chen had slain a true god without relying on Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. Phew! Having completely dealt with the 2 primary culprits behind the plight of the Divine Phoenix clan, Yi Chen finally felt a release. With these 2 main perpetrators dealt with, the remaining members of the Flying Spirit Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan who had participated in the slaughter of the Divine Phoenix Clan could certainly not escape. After emerging from the great cleansing catastrophe of the Undersea Divine Palace, it would be time to fully resolve this matter. With these thoughts flashing through his mind, Yi Chen took a deep breath to restore his nearly depleted energy and spirit. First, he recalled his life-bound Crimson Fire, Flying Sword back into the Sword Palace acupoint. Then, with a sweep of his hand, he captured the 10 Eyes of Creation that had fallen to the ground. Seeing that these 10 Eyes of Creation were identical to the 8 he had obtained earlier, Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction. As these 10 Eyes of Creation were gathered into Yi Chen's hands, a mysterious message also transmitted into his mind. This message was indeed the reward for a martial artist who obtained all 10 eyes of creation at the same time on the 21st floor. It was the reward associated with the Eye of the Divine Sea, as mentioned by the wandering sky Kuanping. The mysterious message that entered Yi Chen's mind revealed that the Eye of the Divine Sea was located on the 32nd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace, in a place known as the Sea of 10,000 Swords. Finally obtaining the news about the Eye of the Divine Sea, Yi Chen's eyes shone brightly. Following that, Yi Chen placed the 10 eyes of creation into his icy jade amulet, and with another sweep of his hand, he collected all the treasures that had fallen from the bodies of the Flying Spirit Clan Elder and the Vermilion Bird Clan Elder. Then, with a forceful yank, Yi Chen pulled out the Purple Lightning Divine Sword, and, while inside the Yubao Hall, turned to look outside at the sovereign Yubo. Feeling the intensity of Yi Chen's gaze, the somewhat maniacal sovereign Yubo was so frightened that he explosively retreated hundreds of feet in an instant. Although the confrontation between Yi Chen and the elders of the Flying Spirit and Vermilion Bird clans took only a moment, Sovereign Yubo was now utterly stunned. Especially the move Yi Chen used to execute the Flying Spirit Clan Elder, Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, had, in the instant it was unleashed, made Sovereign Yubo feel a terrifying power that was completely beyond his tolerance. Experience new tales on Novelbin.com. Instantly, Sovereign Yubo realized that this terrifying power was from the great being he had once seen from a distance, Lord Emperor Yan. Lord Emperor Yan, as the supreme being who had banished countless murderous lifeforms in the Great Cleansing Catastrophe, was known to Sovereign Yubo to have slain not a few divine venerables. Even in his madness, sensing the power of Lord Emperor Yan had completely terrified him, and he even sobered up from his maniacal state. Seeing Yi Chen looking his way, how could he not be utterly frightened? No matter how he thought about it, he could not have imagined that this young man possessed a technique from Lord Emperor Yan. Chapter 602- When Affections Have Grown Over Time. Seeing the crazed God King Yobor retreat frantically in fear, Yi Chen in the Yubao Hall shook his head, then took strides and walked out of the Yubao Hall. After leaving the Yubao Hall, Yi Chen sighed deeply as he looked at the world that now only consisted of him and God King Yobwa. Then, he looked at God King Yobwa and said, "Lord Yobwa, can the passage to the 22nd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace be open now?" The events of the 21st layer were concluded. He had not only obtained all 10 eyes of creation inside, bringing the total number of eyes of creation he possessed to 18, but he had also slain the old clan leaders of the Flying Spirit Clan and the Vermilion Bird Clan, the archenemies of the Divine Phoenix Clan. Moreover, he had even obtained news about the Eye of the Divine Sea. This 21st layer had proven to be a level of great gains. At this moment, there was nothing left in the 21st layer that Yi Chen felt nostalgic for. He only wanted to quickly head to the last few layers. Firstly, to find Zhang Yao, who was very likely somewhere below the 30th layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, and secondly, he absolutely had to reach the 32nd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, to a place called Sea of 10,000 Swords, to find the Eye of the Divine Sea, then to see if he could reach the 33rd layer and get the last 14 eyes of creation. After all, the final 14 eyes of creation of the 33rd layer also involved the reward for collecting them all. A reward that the divine beast Wandering Sky Kuanping had mentioned was of great benefit to an individual martial artist's cultivation. This reward, left by Lord Emperor Yan, was naturally something Yi Chen desired. Hearing Yi Chen's inquiry about whether the passage from the 21st to the 22nd layer could be opened, God King Yobwa's neck shrank violently as he looked at Yi Chen, and trembled. "It's open, the passage is now open. Go quickly." Could this crazed God King Yobwa have spotted the Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill technique I used to kill the old clan leader of the Flying Spirit Clan? Yi Chen hadn't expected God King Yobwa to become so timorous all of a sudden. Muttering to himself in mind, Yi Chen had no intention to communicate much with the somewhat deranged God King Yobwa. With a flicker of his figure, he turned into a rainbow light, flying towards the passage to the next layer which he had already discovered while searching this 21st layer. Only when Yi Chen's figure had completely vanished from his sight did God King Yobwa's frightened expression begin to calm down slightly. This young lad is truly a calamity star, to even possess Lord Emperor Yan's techniques. Damn it, lucky I didn't provoke him more. Otherwise, I might have died by his hands. After patting his chest with some lingering fear, God King Yobua finally put away the Yubao Hall and grabbed his old wine gourd, taking a large gulp of wine. Your journey continues with Novelbin. Calm. After a fierce drink, God King Yobua's racing heart finally began to settle down amid his dizziness. Finally, I'm heading to the 22nd layer. Yichun stood at the entrance of the passage from the Undersea Divine Palace's 21st layer to the 22nd layer, muttering to himself. Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. Still remains 3 chances to evade, 2 chances to kill. I hope it can sustain me through the rest of the Undersea Divine Palace. Recalling the sight of the killing red light from Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill instantly killing the old clan leader of the Flying Spirit Clan, Yichun was greatly shaken. The old clan leader of the Flying Spirit Clan was a 9 tribulations true god, and without Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, Yichun, even if he had exerted all his combat power, would not have been a match for the old clan leader of the Flying Spirit Clan. Yet, against the Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, such a being did not have the slightest ability to resist. This, of course, left Yichun extraordinarily shaken. To surpass the sovereign realm, this is the strength that surpasses the sovereign realm, merely a beam of combat light, effortless in killing a 9 tribulations true god. The more he knew, the more Yichun felt his own strength was too weak. Ever since in the creation chessboard, he heard about Lord Emperor Yen from the Xiaodiao Guangying. Knowing the countless realms of True Qi Realm, Spirit Sea Realm, Rotating Pill Realm, Heavenly Saint Realm, True God Realm, God King Realm, Divine Venerable Realm, Sovereign Realm, and existences beyond the Sovereign. Only then did Yichun realize he was still at a very low level of strength. Mid-Heavenly Saint was far from enough. Forget Mid-Heavenly Saint, even the True God Realm or God King Realm was somewhat insufficient. Yichun still wanted to visit the mountain divine nation of Wanmu Mountain, to explore other star domains, and even find the ZG Star Lord who left behind the primordial star scripture. To meet this Lord Emperor Yen. With his current strength, how could he keep up? Once I survive this great calamity, I must strive to break through to the true God realm. But first, everything must wait until after I've survived this great cleansing calamity. The 21st layer took up 4 months of time. Now, there's not much time left. Better hurry to the last layers of the Undersea Divine Palace. After Yichun pondered his future cultivation goals and pursuits, with a move of his mind and spirit, he flew into the passage from the 21st layer of the Undersea Divine Palace to the 22nd layer. Finally, he was transported to the 22nd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace. As Yichun continued his foray deeper into the Undersea Divine Palace, within the enigmatic void realm of the 33rd level, where the 9 divine goddesses and misses he resided, Zhang Yao, after witnessing Yichun's safety and how he had personally taken action to kill the archenemies of her Divine Phoenix clan, the elder clan leaders of the Flying Spirit clan and the Vermilion Bird clan, finally let go of the worry that had gripped her heart. And having avenged much of the great vengeance, Zhang Yao felt an urge to cry. Cry for the deceased members of the Divine Phoenix clan. Clan members, do you see? The 2 main culprits responsible for your deaths have been killed by Yichun. He has avenged you, Zhang Yao shouted silently in her heart. But she knew the departed clanspeople could no longer hear her. Zhang Yao's heart, once heavy with concern for both Yichun's safety and for mourning the vengeance for her fallen clan members, lightened. Yet at the same time, the 9 divine goddesses and misses he were staring at Yichun's figure and took a deep breath. They were not as shocked as God King Yobua by Yichun's ability to deploy Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. They had known beforehand that Yichun possessed such a technique and had anticipated it. What shocked them was that Yichun had managed to kill a 9 tribulations true god without relying on Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. After all, Yichun was still just a young mid-stage heavenly saint. Even if in the end, the 9 tribulations true god was completely rattled and fearful, resulting in a decreased combat power before the true battle began, Being able to slay such a being indicated that Yi Chen's combat power had definitely reached the level of an 8th Tribulation's true god. A mid-stage heavenly saint young lad possessing the combat power of an 8th Tribulation's true god was something not even the 9 divine goddesses or the sovereign-level misses he could believe without astonishment. Such talent was not befitting a martial artist from the lower realms. Even in the divine nations of the upper realm, it would absolutely count as being among the heavens chosen. After taking a deep breath, Mrs. He was the first to speak out. This young lad has an unpredictable future. Perhaps, he might even rise to the level of someone like Lord Emperor Yen one day. Lord Emperor Yen. Upon hearing Mrs. He's assessment of Yi Chun, while the 9 divine goddesses felt it was a bit exaggerated, some agreed. After all, he was the strongest youth they had encountered after guarding against countless great purges in numerous lower realms. One of the divine goddesses couldn't help but say to Zhang Yao, "Yaoer, this lad you fancy is incredibly powerful. If you don't work harder, perhaps you won't be able to keep up with him in the future." The unintentional words of this divine goddess made Zhang Yao's heart tremble violently. Zhang Yao remembered the first time she met Yi Chun. He was just a young lad in the true Qi realm, yet within a few years, he had grown to a mid-stage heavenly saint whose combat prowess now allowed him to clash with a 9 Tribulations true god. Zhang Yao had always been proud of Yi Chen's strength. But now this remark from the female divine venerable made Zhang Yao also feel a tinge of worry. She wasn't worried that Yi Chen's affection for her would change. What worried her was that she wouldn't be able to accompany Yi Chun in traversing the world. If one day, Yi Chun became a divine king, divine venerable, or even a sovereign while she was still just a heavenly saint, how could she catch up with him and accompany him to the ends of heaven and earth? Even more, if one day Yi Chun faced danger from entities at the level of divine king, divine venerable, or sovereign while she was still just a heavenly saint, how could she help Yi Chun? Zhang Yao felt unsettled, worried that she couldn't keep up with Yi Chun, worried that she couldn't assist him. Yeah. Seeing that Zhang Yao looked distraught, Mrs. He stopped the talking divine venerable and looked toward Zhang Yao. However, after hesitating, she also couldn't help but say to Zhang Yao, "Yaoer, if love lasts for a long time, does it really matter whether we are together every single morning and evening? You're not willing to part with Yi Chun now, but one day if the gap in strength between you grows too wide, separation is inevitable. A brief parting, if you can become stronger, means you can have a longer companionship in the future. Your grandmother isn't forcing you to make a decision, but if you were to cultivate with us, I can guarantee that at least until the sovereign realm, you won't fall behind Yi Chun." Mrs. He's words made Zhang Yao's eyes well up with tears. Of course, she wanted to be with Yi Chun forever, not just for a short period of time. Moreover, her clan members who had been captured by the Black Crow God King, her parents, her grandfather, all needed her to be stronger. Yi Chun helped her kill the elder clan leaders of the Flying Spirit clan and the Vermilion Bird clan, but she couldn't always rely on Yi Chun to deal with all opponents, couldn't let Yi Chun face all dangers alone. She must become stronger. Chapter 603. Grandma 9 Ants. If I follow you to the 10,000 Beasts domain to cultivate, how long before I can return? Zhang Yao asked Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables. Upon hearing Zhang Yao's question, Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables all trembled in their hearts. This was the first time they heard Zhang Yao actively inquire about following them to the 10,000 Beasts domain for cultivation. Clearly, the earlier conversation had truly worried Zhang Yao, truly making her consider the future. Experience more tales on Novelbin.com. Zhang Yao finally began to seriously consider following them to the 10,000 Beasts domain to cultivate, no longer rejecting the idea. Yaoer. Mrs. He looked at Zhang Yao with some excitement. As a sovereign realm powerhouse, she seldom felt such excitement, which shows how much she valued and cherished Zhang Yao. If you cultivate with us, as long as you lay a solid foundation and are able to start cultivating on your own, you can return to the 10,000 Beasts domain at any time. Your goal is to reach the sovereign realm or even stronger realms. To lay a solid foundation for this goal, with your talent and the compatibility of our Feathered Spirit Clan's techniques, you should be able to reach the high stage of the true God realm to lay down your foundation. This stage, at most, will take no more than 100 years. It's simply a snap of the fingers, Mrs. He said. 100 years was indeed like a snap of the fingers for a sovereign realm powerhouse. Even without mentioning sovereign realm powerhouses, even for those in the rotating pill realm, it was considered quite short. Hearing that it would take at most 100 years, and that she could leave the 10,000 beasts domain to cultivate on her own once she advanced to the high stage of the true God realm, Zhang Yao also nodded slightly. If she could exchange 100 years to be with Yi Chun for thousands or even longer, she was willing to bear this century of waiting. Grandma 9 Ants, I promise you, I will follow you to the 10,000 beasts domain to cultivate. Zhang Yao suddenly stood up and kowtowed to Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables. However, before leaving, I hope Grandma and the 9 Ants will let me explore the undersea divine palace with Yi Chun, and I hope you can help me find the clanspeople taken away by the Black Crow God King. Zhang Yao made her small request from the bottom of her heart. Get up quickly, Yaoer. Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables helped Zhang Yao to her feet. As long as you finish the basic part of the techniques we've taught you during this time, we will take you to see Yi Chun. Judging by the progress, you should be able to complete the basic part in about 1 more month. As for your clanspeople, rest assured, Yaoer, we will resolve these matters for you before we leave the 10,000 beasts domain, Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables earnestly said to Zhang Yao. 1 month's time. Finish the basic part, and I'll be able to see Yi Chun. Hearing the words of Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables, Zhang Yao's gaze turned towards the world beyond this mysterious realm, as if looking in the direction where Yi Chun was. Yi Chun, I will finish my cultivation as soon as possible to find you, so we can face the undersea divine palace together. After we get through the undersea divine palace, even if I go to the 10,000 beasts domain, I will strive to complete the foundational cultivation set by Grandma and the rest within 100 years, quickly reach the high stage of the true God realm, and come back to find you. After firmly speaking to herself, Zhang Yao looked at Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables, her face revealing a determined expression. Grandma, I will start cultivating now. MHM. Seeing the expression on Zhang Yao's face, Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables felt both gratified and a bit heartache. But they knew the path of a powerful being sometimes requires enduring loneliness. Zhang Yao's persistence would surely bring her an exceedingly worthy reward. Zhang Yao would surely become a pride for them in the future. 1 month later, at the entrance to the passage from the 30th to the 31st floor of the undersea divine palace, Yi Chun stood in front of the fallen colossal giant's corpse, spitting fiercely. Damn it! Such bad luck. To encounter a crazed divine king at the very end of this 30th layer, causing me to lose one of the Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill techniques. Since leaving the 21st layer of the undersea divine palace, Yi Chun had been hurrying towards the final few layers of the palace. Along the way, Yi Chun faced countless crises and was attacked by numerous terrifying lethal beings. Thanks to his vigilance, the protection of the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying ship, and many other methods, Yi Chun managed to respond successfully and kept advancing downwards. Of course, on the 25th and 28th layers, when Yi Chun faced 2 threats that he couldn't avoid, he also used up 2 of the dodging opportunities from Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. Originally, Yi Chun thought he could continue advancing smoothly. But to his surprise, at the very end of the 30th layer of the undersea divine palace, he directly encountered a divine king that was even more frenzied than the previous Yobua divine king. This divine king even issued a challenge to him, saying that either it would die or Yi Chun would. If it died, the passage to a lower layer would open. But if Yi Chun died, his journey through the undersea divine palace would utterly end. A life and death battle with a divine king. Even if Yi Chun were incredibly powerful, he couldn't contend with a divine king. Seeing this frenzied divine king resolved to fight to the death with him, Yi Chun had no chance to continue downward. Other than killing this divine king, Yi Chun had no other choice. In the end, Yi Chun had to use the second Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, killing method to finally slay this frenzied, towering giant of a divine king. This, on top of the killing method used previously to execute the elder chieftain of the Flying Spirit clan, and the 2 evasion methods expended on the 25th and 28th levels. Now, what remained of Yi Chen's Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill ultimate techniques was just 1 killing method and 1 evasion method. And Yi Chen had only just passed through the 30th level, with the most dangerous 3 levels still ahead, the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd levels of the Undersea Divine Palace yet to be conquered. This caused Yi Chen some worry as well. However, the one thing that somewhat eased Yi Chen's mind was the fact that the frenzied Divine King he had just slain hadn't lied. After killing this Divine King, the passage from the 30th level to the 31st level did indeed open up. Only the last 3 levels remain. No matter what, I still have 1 killing method and 1 evasion method left. Let's charge to the next level. The Eye of the Divine Sea, on the 32nd level, and the final 14 Eyes of Creation, on the 33rd level, are getting closer. I can't give up now. After gritting his teeth, Yi Chen flew into the passage from the 30th level to the 31st level. A moment later, he entered the 31st level of the Undersea Divine Palace, the last 3 levels. The 31st level of the Undersea Divine Palace. This was a desert realm, where sand filled the sky and ground in every direction, and gusts of fierce wind made the world appear dull and filled with a haze of swirling sand. After entering the 31st level of the Undersea Divine Palace, Yi Chen carefully navigated this level on the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat, searching for the passage to the 32nd level. Whoosh! 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 About half an hour after Yi Chen had been flying through this level, suddenly, from the desert below, long, thick, brown vines burst forth, reaching for the sky and tightly ensnaring Yi Chen's heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat. The heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat, being of the highest grade, could only display a very small portion of its might under Yi Chen's control at the moment. Facing an attack of the true God realm, the flying boat struggled to resist. And these tens of thick brown vines that shot up to the heavens, each harbored the strength of a true god. Upon being completely bound, the flying boat was rendered utterly unable to fly. Inside the flying boat, Yi Chen, taken aback by this sudden predicament, was considering his options when several enchanting voices came from the vast desert below. Little brother inside the flying boat, come out. At such a young age, you're quite impressive to have reached the 31st level of the Undersea Divine Palace. We sisters would love to keep you here to cultivate with us in the 31st level. Sisters. Yi Chen, hearing these seductive voices, had already extended his divine sense toward the source of the sounds. Upon probing, Yi Chen saw 5 exceptionally curvaceous and beautiful women, dressed in skimpy clothes woven from green leaves, seated on the thick vines that had ensnared the flying boat, smiling mischievously at him. But what caught Yi Chen's attention more was that all 5 women were at the God King realm. In this 31st level of the Undersea Divine Palace, there were actually 5 goddess kings. Seeing Yi Chen staring at them, the 5 women giggled and said, "Little brother, do you find us sisters attractive? Stay with us here for cultivation. We've heard that you're quite powerful." "You've heard of me?" Yi Chen, unconcerned with the provocative actions of these beautiful women, was instead surprised by their mention of having heard of him. "Little brother, on the 28th level, you escaped our sister of the Red Refinement Snake Clan's trap by relying on a powerful and extraordinary evasion method. Our sister had already passed on news of you to us. Hee hee. Get to know us, little brother. We 5 are God Kings of the Green Silk Clan, and cultivating with us will bring you great benefits." The Red Refinement Snake Clan? Yi Chen recalled the encirclement he had faced from a giant gray snake god king on the 28th level. In the end, it was only by using one of the Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill evasion methods that he was able to escape and leave the 28th level. He hadn't expected that the giant gray snake god king had connections with these 5 god kings on the 31st level and could even send messages. This was somewhat unexpected for Yi Chen. Thinking further that these 5 goddess kings said they were of the Green Silk Clan, and considering the situation of the Red Refinement Snake Clan's gray giant snake god king, Yi Chen began to speculate. Could it be that these 5 goddess kings were 5 giant green snakes? However, regardless of what race these 5 goddess kings belonged to, Yi Chun had no interest whatsoever in their offer to cultivate together. With only about 4 months left until the 1-year deadline of the Great Cleansing Treasure Hunt, he needed to hurry to the 32nd level of the Undersea Divine Palace. How could he afford to waste time on this 31st level? My apologies to the Divine Kings. I need to continue on my journey and cannot afford to linger here, Yi Chun said to the 5 seductive and beautiful women on the thick brown vines below, shaking his head.
Chapter 604. Kish.
Upon hearing Yi Chun's words, the 5 seductive and beautiful goddess kings couldn't help but look displeased. Little brother, we sisters don't want to deal with you, so we let you stay here to cultivate. But if you really want to leave, then we sisters won't be so polite anymore. As they spoke, the 5 voluptuous goddess kings of the Green Silk Clan stretched out their palms, and once again, strands of vines flew out, dancing in the sky as if the next moment they would shoot out and bind Yi Chun just as they had bound the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat. Watching the actions of these 5 Green Silk Clan goddess kings, Yi Chun frowned slightly. Clearly, for some reason, these 5 Green Silk Clan goddess kings were not willing to let him leave. As for the so-called cultivation together that these 5 Green Silk Clan goddess kings mentioned, Yi Chun knew without thinking that it was just an excuse. Even if he stayed here and cultivated with these goddess kings, it wouldn't be any different from being trapped here, unable to leave. The God King Seniors wouldn't want to keep me here just for simple cultivation, right? Please, Seniors, tell me, what exactly do you want by keeping me here? Yi Chun asked the 5 Green Silk Clan goddess kings. Upon hearing Yi Chun's words, one of the Green Silk Clan goddess kings, the one with the longest and most seductive legs, laughed playfully. Little brother, you really are smart. We sisters kept you here because we've heard how incredibly powerful you are. There's a cultivation technique we sisters have that requires a formidable young man to practice it thoroughly with us. Don't worry, as long as you cooperate with us sisters, it won't take too much of your time. We've heard you already possess the Eye of Creation. Once the Great Purge and treasure hunting time is over, we sisters will naturally let you go. After the seductive beauty with the longest legs finished speaking, the other 4 beautiful goddess kings also giggled and looked at Yi Chun, even winking flirtatiously at him. Feeling a chill in his heart upon hearing the words of these 5 goddess kings, Yi Chun looked at their expressions and could tell that the cultivation technique they mentioned practicing together was certainly not a good one. He might end up with not even his bones left if he practiced with them. Seeing that Yi Chun was still hesitant, one of the seductive goddess kings, seemingly impatient, stood up from the thick vines she was sitting on, her form instantly transforming into a huge, heaven-shocking green serpent, flicking her tongue and speaking in a coquettish human voice toward Yi Chun within the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat. Little brother, don't force your sister's hand. Now, this cultivation technique is very interesting. It's a divine cultivation secret technique of our Green Silk Clan, only to be practiced between partners. If we hadn't taken a liking to you, we would never consider cultivating it with you. This Green Silk Clan seductive goddess king's true form was, as Yi Chun had guessed, a green silk giant serpent. Hee, little brother, do you find your sister's true form beautiful? Swish, 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 swish. The remaining seductive and beautiful goddess kings also instantly transformed, all turning into huge, heaven-shocking green serpents, giggling and speaking to Yi Chun in human voice. These God King-level heaven-shocking giant serpents indeed possessed a noble beauty unique to serpents and perhaps counted as stunning beauties within the Green Silk Clan. But Yi Chun certainly couldn't appreciate it. The thought of practicing the partner-exclusive cultivation technique with them was even more unacceptable to him. It looks like I'll have to resort to using Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. Yi Chun furrowed his brows deeply. He hadn't expected that his earlier success in passing the challenges would bring him such great trouble on this 31st level, directly leading to these 5 goddess kings wanting to cultivate with him. At this moment, facing the 5 goddess kings, even with the Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill technique, Yi Chun was somewhat worried. After all, He only had one killing opportunity and one chance to dodge left in his Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill technique, and he was now confronted by the siege of 5 goddess kings. Probably, these 2 opportunities would most likely not be enough to break this deadlock. After all, although his ability to dodge could break through such an encirclement, he had not yet found the passage from the 31st to the 32nd layer. If at this stage, he were to be caught and trapped by these 5 goddess kings again, his last remaining opportunity to dodge would be wasted in vain. Find your next read on novelbin.com. But staying here was simply not an option. Just as Yi-chan had no other choice and was preparing to risk using his last chance to dodge, hoping he could escape the 31st layer, the 5 bewitching goddess kings, who had turned into giant serpents in the sky toying with Yi-chan and laughing as they watched him struggle, suddenly raised their huge serpentine heads to look into the sky. Their teasing expressions directed at Yi-chan vanished. Seeing that the demeanor of the 5 goddess kings had changed, Yi-chan, who was ready to make a last stand, also looked toward the direction they were staring at. He hadn't fully made out that part of the sky when a familiar voice reached his ears. "You can't just bully Yi-chan like that." This voice was unmistakably Zhang Yao's. After a month of arduous training, Zhang Yao had finally completed the 2nd phase of the training required by Mrs. He and, just in time for Yi-chen's moment of crisis, she had arrived. "Zhang Yao." Yi-chan looked up toward the source of the voice and saw a stunningly fast streak of silvery light speeding through the heavens. As the light drew closer to where he and the 5 goddess kings were, a feather shot out from within the dazzling streak of light. This mere half-meter-long feather, in a flash through the void, instantaneously sliced through the 4 or 5 dozen thick vines that were binding Yi-chen's heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat, all of which held the power of the 9th tribulation true god level. That single feather multiplied into 5 in an instant, transforming into 5 feathers that ding, 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 ding shot directly in front of the 5 goddess kings' huge green serpent heads in a split second. It was as if in the next moment, if those 5 feathers so wished, they could completely annihilate the 5 goddess kings. As this feather flew out and instantly reversed the situation where Yi-chan was bound, a girl of peerless beauty, with eyes as bright as the stars, emerged from the brilliant light of the escape. This girl, if not the one Yi-chan had been desperately searching for in the Undersea Divine Palace, the one he had not seen since the 1st layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, who else could it be but Zhang Yao? Indeed, as the Divine King of the Stone Giants had probed, Zhang Yao was at the very bottom of the Undersea Divine Palace. She appeared just when Yi-chan had no way to break free from the entrapment of the 5 green silk clan goddess kings. Seeing Zhang Yao appear and instantly reversing the situation where he was trapped, the feather she used even radiated a strong aura that Yi-chan had not even sensed on higher-level divine kings, suggesting it could possibly be at the level of divine venerable, which also took Yi-chan by surprise. What surprised Yi-chan even more was that upon her appearance, Zhang Yao, as soon as she saw him, flew straight toward his heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat. Of course, Yi-chan immediately let Zhang Yao in. But what Yi-chan did not expect was that, as soon as Zhang Yao flew in, she looked at him with teary eyes, and then, to Yi-chen's utter astonishment, she threw herself into his arms. To top it off, she tiptoed up and with her soft, tender red lips, she pressed them against Yi-chen's lips with a fervent joy. "Oh Kish." This was their first kiss, happening in such a reunion after a long separation, after Zhang Yao made the painful decision to head to the 10,000 Beasts domain. Chapter 605. The soft and tender touch between delicate lips and the faint scent emanating from Zhang Yao's body caused Yi-chen's heart to tremble uncontrollably, intoxicating him. Yi-chan couldn't help but embrace Zhang Yao, who had thrown herself into his arms, holding her tightly and even kissing her back on the lips. Holding this girl, Yi-chan felt as though he was embracing the entire world. It seemed like an eternity had passed, yet it also felt incredibly brief, before Zhang Yao finally realized what she had done. Her stunningly beautiful face instantly blushed. Her petite ear tips turned even redder with embarrassment, and her heart pounded thump, 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 violently. She gently stretched out her arms and finally wriggled free from Yi-chen's embrace, then bounced away like a little rabbit. Seeing Jiang Yao's bashful demeanor, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile. This was the girl he liked. Innocent and beautiful. Seeing Jiang Yao shyly lower her head, Yi Chun walked in front of her, took her soft white hand in his, and was very concerned about the reason behind her sudden actions. Yi Chun had a feeling that Jiang Yao's sudden outburst of emotions was probably related to their recent separation. Yaoer, where have you been during this time? In the 14th layer, I heard a divine king say that you might be in these last few layers, and I was really worried, Yi Chun asked Jiang Yao. After their intimate kiss, Yi Chen's terms of endearment for Jiang Yao became much more affectionate. Hearing Yi Chen's question, Jiang Yao finally raised her head from her shyness. Her eyes looking at Yi Chun, they sparkled slightly. Yi Chun, after I obtained the first eye of creation in the 6th layer, I was suddenly transported to a mysterious place in the 33rd layer, where I met Grandma and 9 aunties who are female divine venerables. Continue your adventure at Novelbin. Calm. The first eye of creation in the 6th layer. Yi Chun was somewhat stunned. He had never imagined that the first eye of creation in the 6th layer had been obtained by Jiang Yao. And Jiang Yao was transported to the 33rd layer? And who were this grandma and the 9 female divine venerables? There are 9 female divine venerables in the 33rd layer. Seeing Yi Chun shocked and frozen, Jiang Yao gave a gentle smile and explained to Yi Chun, I was told by Grandma and the 9 aunties that their feathered spirit clan has a certain connection with our divine phoenix clan, which is why she helped me. They are not just the guardians of the 33rd layer, but are responsible for overseeing the great cleansing calamity of the entire undersea divine palace and even the entire lower realm. Yi Chun, after I finished my cultivation in the 33rd layer, through Grandma and the others, I could see your adventures in the undersea divine palace. At that time, when you were battling the elders of the Flying Spirit clan and the Vermilion Bird clan, I was so worried. Yi Chun, thank you for helping the Divine Phoenix clan eliminate our great enemy. Jiang Yao shared her experiences with Yi Chun without holding anything back. When Yi Chun heard that Mrs. He was a sovereign-level powerhouse, he too was shocked. Sovereign level, that's the level of authority like the little provincial princess's father, the East Territory King, just below the stature of Lord Emperor Yen, top-tier powerhouses. Yi Chun never expected that the 33rd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace would hide such a group of people, and that they were following the orders of Lord Emperor Yen, in charge of the great cleansing calamity of the lower realm. From the Rock King and the 3 brothers of the Pampoluo clan, Yi Chun already knew many exiled beings would face special trials, administered by someone. Yi Chun didn't expect that it was Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables who were in charge. And when Yi Chun heard that Mrs. He and the 9 female divine venerables had taught Jiang Yao a cultivation technique and even intended to take her as a disciple, he was truly happy for Jiang Yao from the bottom of his heart. However, upon hearing that Mrs. He and the others planned to take Jiang Yao to the 10,000 Beasts domain, Yi Chun felt an extreme sense of unwillingness to part with her. 10,000 Beasts domain. While he did not know where it was, it clearly wasn't within the boundless mountain star domain, indicating it was a place far, far away. The idea of being so far apart from Jiang Yao was, of course, unbearable for Yi Chun. But Yi Chun also understood that this was Jiang Yao's opportunity, and he certainly didn't want to be so selfish as to ask her to give up her opportunity just to be with him. Seeing Yi Chun's reluctant look, Jiang Yao's heart softened, and she said to Yi Chun, Yi Chun, if you are unwilling, I won't go. Even though she had thought things through at Mrs. He's, she still didn't want to leave Yi Chun while by his side. Yi Chun, hearing Jiang Yao's words, smiled and pinched Jiang Yao's nose, saying, Silly girl, although I can't bear to see you go so far, the fact you will be able to follow the Venerable and the 9 female divine venerables to cultivate, of course I'm happy. Do you still remember the first time we met, in the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode? Back then, you were in the Spirit Sea realm and I was only in the True Chi realm. I will never forget how beautiful and strong you were. I hope that after you cultivate with the Sovereign He and the 9 female divine venerables, you will become a beautiful true goddess king, a female divine venerable. Although the 10,000 Beasts domain is not within the domain of the Wumu Mountain Star Field, as long as you and I are strong, how could the distance between these star fields stop us from meeting again? We've only been cultivating for a few years, and we have become heavenly saints. Even if we later cultivate to the divine king realm, it won't take many years. Yi Chen's eyes radiated absolute confidence. Yaoer, wait until we both become true gods, divine kings, and divine venerables, and together we'll explore the 10,000 beasts domain and the Wumu Mountain star field. We'll explore countless star fields. Seeing Yi Chen's bright, spirited eyes, Jiang Yao's heart began to race, and she nodded her head earnestly. Yi Chen, we will definitely become true gods, divine kings, and divine venerables, and we will definitely explore countless star fields together. Thinking of the things that might happen in the future made them both smile at each other. But the possibility of separating soon also brought a tinge of sadness between them. It was only now that Yi Chen understood why Jiang Yao kissed him so intimately upon meeting him. She too had thought of their imminent separation and couldn't keep her emotions steady. Ultimately, it was Yi Chen who, with a wave of his hand, pushed the matter of Jiang Yao leaving for the 10,000 beasts domain aside. Alright, we can talk about the 10,000 beasts domain later. For now, Yaoer, it's more important for us to venture through the undersea divine palace. However, about that feather. Yi Chen pointed to the feather that had cut through the vines tying down the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat, which had split into 5, each hovering in front of the 5 goddess kings of the Green Silk clan, who didn't dare to move and said to Jiang Yao, Yaoer, is this a treasure given to you by Sovereign He and the 9 female divine venerables? With a gentle smile and the blossoming of her dimples, Jiang Yao said to Yi Chen, Yes, Yi Chen. I heard from Grandma that you were very impressive, solving the Eye of Creation chessboard, and received Lord Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. Grandma sent me from the 33rd layer to meet you here on the 31st and also bestowed this feather treasure upon me, saying that it would aid me 3 times. The rest, we'll have to figure out on our own as we brave the undersea divine palace. Doesn't that mean we've already used 1 chance now? Yi Chen smiled lightly. Well, this opportunity can't be wasted. We must completely resolve the matter with these 5 goddess kings. Armed with Jiang Yao's feather treasure and his remaining Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill, and most importantly, having Jiang Yao back by his side, Yi Chen was now even more confident in venturing through the undersea divine palace and seeking the Eye of the Divine Sea and the Eye of Creation. Now, they would start by dealing with the issues on the 31st layer. Hearing Yi Chen's decision to deal with the 5 goddess kings, Jiang Yao also looked out towards the 5 who had turned into a sky-shaking green silk giant serpent, her cheeks flushing as she said to Yi Chen, They spoke to you that way. Yi Chen, I'm glad you didn't agree to divine cultivation with them, otherwise I wouldn't even want to see you. Ha ha. Seeing Jiang Yao's slightly jealous manner, Yi Chen laughed heartily and took Jiang Yao's hand, flying out of the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat, landing directly in front of the 5 goddess kings. Dear sisters, now can you let us leave? Yi Chen said to the 5 goddess kings. At that moment, the 5 goddess kings from the Green Silk clan, who had lost their previous charm, were trembling in fear from the sudden display of the feather treasure by Jiang Yao. Even though they had cultivated to the divine king realm, they had never seen such a powerful treasure. This was no longer a heaven-reaching treasure used by divine kings, or even a mysterious heaven treasure used by divine venerables. It was clearly a legendary, extreme heaven treasure that only masters of the venerable level could possess. They never imagined that the young man they fancied would have such a formidable woman with him, holding such a supreme treasure. Now, hearing Yi Chen's question and seeing the unspoken glances from Jiang Yao towards them, they no longer entertained any thoughts of divine cultivation with Yi Chen. The 5 goddess kings hastily smiled bitterly at Yi Chen. Little brother, the passage from the 31st layer to the 32nd layer is open. You should hurry and take this little sister to the 32nd layer. Yi Chen and Jiang Yao shared a smile upon hearing the goddess king's words. Then, with a gentle gesture from Jiang Yao's fair hand, the 5 feathers that were floating in front of the goddess kings merged into one, transforming back into a single white half-meter-long feather, which Jiang Yao tucked away. After that, Yichun and Zhongyao rode the heaven-reaching divine artifact flying boat and left the domain. And long after Yichun and Zhongyao had gone, the 5 goddess kings of the Green Silk clan, collapsing weakly, murmured, "Such a pity to lose that little brother. No chance to cultivate with him." While the 5 goddess kings were murmuring, Yichun and Zhongyao had already found the passage from the 31st to the 32nd layer. Recalling the news they got after collecting 10 eyes of creation on the 21st layer, that the Eye of the Divine Sea was hidden in a place called Sea of 10,000 Swords on the 32nd layer, Yichun couldn't wait to head to the 32nd layer. He squeezed Zhongyao's hand tightly and said to her, "Yaoer, for the remaining 2 layers, let's venture through them together. Let's seek the treasures together." Zhongyao looked up at Yichun, her eyes shining. "Just like when we first journeyed through the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode and the Heavenly Saint ancient tomb. Let's venture through this Undersea Divine Palace together." Chapter 606-. The Sea of 10,000 Swords and an Old Friend. The 32nd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace. When Yichun stepped into the passage and set foot on this level with Zhongyao, he couldn't help but take a deep breath. After nearly 8 months, he had braved layer after layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, passed through numerous checkpoints, and survived crisis after crisis, finally reaching this 32nd layer, the penultimate of the entire 33 layers of the Undersea Divine Palace. It was the most special layer that possessed the Eye of the Divine Sea. At this moment, there were only 4 months left before the end of the 1-year search for the Eye of Creation, and the Eye of the Divine Sea prior to the Great Cleansing Calamity, which would bring about the annihilation of all martial artists in 4 months' time. If he could find the Eye of the Divine Sea hidden within this layer in these 4 months, he would be able to ensure that countless martial artists would survive this calamity. This, of course, made Yichun feel both nervous and excited. After taking a deep breath, Yichun suppressed his nervous and excited emotions and, together with Zhongyao, looked towards the new world of the 32nd layer they had just entered. This layer was a world with swamps, lakes, and mountains, but Yichun and Zhongyao did not immediately see the ocean known as the Sea of 10,000 Swords, which was rumored to conceal the Eye of the Divine Sea. "It seems our teleportation drop-off isn't on the edge of the Sea of 10,000 Swords. We'll need to search thoroughly through this land to find that Sea of 10,000 Swords." Yichun said to Zhongyao, "Yaoer, let's go. Let's use the heaven-reaching divine artifact vessel to thoroughly search this land and see if there's an ocean." "MHM." Zhongyao nodded, and together with Yichun, they entered the heaven-reaching divine artifact vessel. Whoosh! Next, the heaven-reaching divine artifact vessel began to fly through this vast land at an extremely fast speed. The vessel traversed vast expanses of land and mountains and even flew over numerous lakes that dotted the land. When they had thoroughly searched the southern part of this land and saw no hint of the ocean, the vessel continued its flight towards the north. Eventually, Yichun and Zhongyao finally saw a vast and boundless ocean at the northernmost tip of this land. Sea of 10,000 Swords. Upon seeing this ocean, Yichun and Zhongyao both exclaimed in surprise. The reason they recognized this ocean as the Sea of 10,000 Swords they were seeking was that looking towards the vastness of the ocean, they could see sword lights soaring from the ocean into the sky. Even without stepping into the ocean, they could feel the marvel of the countless sword lights soaring skyward. Among these numerous soaring sword lights, they saw the strongest beam of sword light, towering and spanning the ocean, as if it were a colossal pillar stabilizing the sea, incredibly vast. Atop this beam of sword light, 3 characters shone brightly. Sea of 10,000 Swords. Seeing the characters Sea of 10,000 Swords on the strongest beam of sword light towering into the heavens, Yichun and Zhongyao knew for certain that they had come to the right place. This ocean is entirely a sea of sword lights. It's hard to imagine what lies within to create so many sword lights, Zhongyao exclaimed as she looked at the Sea of 10,000 Swords ahead. Yichun smiled. "Let's go in and find out." They took the heaven-reaching divine artifact vessel and headed straight into the Sea of 10,000 Swords. To find the Eye of the Divine Sea hidden within the Sea of 10,000 Swords, They must brave through it, even if it were a field of blades or a sea of flames. As Yi-chan and Jiang Yao rode the heaven-reaching divine artifact vessel into the region of the Sea of 10,000 Swords and entered among the soaring sword lights, they discovered that the seawater, which looked quite normal from the outside, formed a straight passageway to the ocean floor once they were inside. This water channel seemed to be guiding them towards something. And as Yi-chan and Jiang Yao flew along this water channel for nearly half an hour, they found that the endless sea had vanished, and they had come directly into a special space hidden within the Sea of 10,000 Swords. While they had prepared to thoroughly search the Sea of 10,000 Swords, they never expected to come directly into a special space following the water channel, which certainly left Yi-chan and Jiang Yao immensely shocked. And what shocked them even more was that within this special space, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao saw countless people, or more accurately, countless sword cultivators. At least tens of thousands of sword cultivators had gathered within this not-so-large special space, and strikingly, every one of these sword cultivators was someone Yi-chan had encountered on the first floor of the Undersea Divine Palace from the Minor Spirit Realm and the 33 continents of the Lower Realm. No matter what, Yi-chan had never imagined that he and Jiang Yao would encounter so many martial artists on the 32nd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace. Could it be that all these people had successfully broken into the 32nd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace? Read exclusive chapters at novelbin.com. But that's impossible. On his way here, Yi-chan had not seen so many people descending further down, as practically all the martial artists were blocked within the first 14 floors. Moreover, many of these martial artists were of the Heavenly Saint realm, and even among those in the True God realm, many were considered low-tier true gods. Their strength was simply not enough to support them entering this place. Even the old clan leaders of the Flying Spirit clan and the Vermilion Bird clan, both 9 Tribulations true gods, were killed by Yi-chan on the 21st floor. It was impossible for so many martial artists to have successfully reached the 32nd floor. What's more, these tens of thousands of martial artists were all sword cultivators. This was even stranger. Clearly, there must be some astounding secret hidden in the depths of the Sea of 10,000 Swords within this special space. Yi-chan and Jiang Yao also noticed that in this rather small special space, aside from the tens of thousands of sword cultivators, there was only a colossal sword that stood 1,000 zhang high in the center of the special space. All the sword cultivators were sitting in meditation around this 1,000 zhang colossal sword. Obviously, it was very likely that this colossal sword was the key to this special space. While Yi-chan was amazed at encountering so many sword cultivators suddenly in the Sea of 10,000 Swords on the 32nd floor, the tens of thousands of sword cultivators sitting around the colossal sword also noticed Yi-chan. Among them, 2 sword cultivators flew over to Yi-chan in astonishment after recognizing him straight away. These 2 sword cultivators turned out to be the Three-Eyed Skeleton and Qing Shuang True God, the blue-robed sword-bearing woman from the Northern Dark Clan who accompanied Huameyer in the Five Elements Mountain, both of whom Yi-chan knew very well from his escapades there. By this time, the Three-Eyed Skeleton had already returned to the 4 Tribulations True God level, which was somewhat surprising to Yi-chan. And Qing Shuang True God, who was a 4 Tribulations True God initially, had even stepped into the realm of the 5 Tribulations True God. Both had made progress in their realms, to the surprise of Yi-chan, but what surprised him even more was that, even with their improved states, it seemed unlikely for them to have broken into this 32nd floor at the levels of 4 or 5 Tribulations True Gods. In the midst of Yi-chan's surprise, the Three-Eyed Skeleton and Qing Shuang True God had already flown to his side. Looking at the stunningly beautiful girl Jiang Yao beside Yi-chan, they said to Yi-chan as their opening line, "Yi-chan, how did you also end up here? Don't tell me, after being unable to continue in the Undersea Divine Palace, you too were mysteriously brought here." Unable to continue in the Undersea Divine Palace? Mysteriously brought here? Are you saying, Three-Eyed Skeleton Sr. and Qing Shuang Sr., that you did not find this place by yourselves? Yi-chan asked the Three-Eyed Skeleton and Qing Shuang True God. At the same time, he added, "Jiang Yao and I came in from outside, we weren't brought here." Upon hearing Yi-chan's words, boom, 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 the tens of thousands of sword cultivators seated in meditation all stood up in shock, staring at Yi-chan and Zhang Yao in disbelief. Made it here? Are you two youngsters saying that you fought your way through the undersea divine palace, floor by floor, until you arrived at this 32nd floor? The tens of thousands of sword cultivators couldn't believe it. The three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God also couldn't believe it, and with a wry smile, they said to Yi-chan, "Yi-chan, all of us here were trapped within the first dozen or so floors and didn't dare to proceed further. In the end, we were all taken here from various realms by some inexplicable force. Most of these tens of thousands of sword cultivators are from our Northern Dark Clan and the Blood God Clan, and the remainder are also from the 33 continents. However, without exception, all had previously failed to make it through the Undersea Divine Palace and didn't continue, choosing a realm to settle down before being brought here. Yi-chan, the fact that you two could find this place on your own is truly unbelievable." At the end, the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God looked at Yi-chan and Zhang Yao with immense astonishment. Chapter 607. The three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God were in awe. Yi-chan and Zhang Yao exchanged a glance, equally stunned. They hadn't expected that these tens of thousands of sword cultivators had not simply made their way to the 32nd level of the Undersea Divine Palace on their own, but rather been pulled into this place by some mysterious force from various levels. What mysterious power could actually transport so many sword cultivators here? Zhang Yao transmitted her voice to Yi-chan. "Mrs. He, such a formidable sovereign realm expert, could only take me from the 6th level to the 33rd level. This mysterious power has brought so many people into the 32nd layer. Could it be as formidable as Mrs. He? I haven't heard Mrs. He or the 9 goddess ants mention that there's such a formidable person in the 32nd level." Zhang Yao was somewhat baffled by the events that were unfolding. What Zhang Yao didn't know was that at that very moment, in the 33rd level of the Undersea Divine Palace, Mrs. He and the 9 goddess ants, who had been keeping an eye on Zhang Yao and caring for her in secret, were also speaking. Mrs. He, somewhat taken aback, said, "I didn't expect that this time the ascetic cultivator would release his cultivation realm for so many sword cultivators to enter. Could it be that, after all these years, the ascetic has finally come out of his seclusion? The influx of the Eye of the Divine Sea into the 32nd level sea of 10,000 swords this time was initially thought to be just like the previous instances, overseen by that ascetic's sword spirit. Now, it seems quite different. The ascetic has opened his cultivation realm, apparently ready to preside over it himself." Upon hearing Mrs. He mention ascetic cultivator, the 9 goddess ants too showed surprise on their faces. "Mrs. He, are you saying it's that person from the Heavenly Curtain Mountain God Nation?" Mrs. He nodded. When the 9 goddess ants saw Mrs. He nod, they couldn't help but express their amazement. "That person is no ordinary individual. We haven't seen him for countless ages, and it's really unknown what he'll be like when he comes out of seclusion, or whether he will leave the Undersea Divine Palace. Speaking of which, he is not an exile and his status is extremely high. It was rather surprising that he chose to practice in the Undersea Divine Palace among the myriad lower realms in Celestial Spirit Star. It seems Celestial Spirit Star is not as simple as it looks," Mrs. He said. "Celestial Spirit Star may seem ordinary among the lower realms, but the legends have mentioned figures of extraordinary shock and awe. Since that ascetic chose to cultivate in the Undersea Divine Palace, clearly he had his reasons. It's a matter of the Heavenly Curtain Mountain God Nation, and I don't know much about it, but surely there were reasons. However, no matter what the reasons, I hope Yaoer and Yi-chan can successfully make their way through the 32nd level. The ascetic is a good person and will not bring harm to them. If they can gain some benefits from him, it would be incredibly advantageous." Yi-chan and Zhang Yao, of course, were unaware of Mrs. He and the 9 goddess ants' conversation. At this moment, hearing Zhang Yao's words, Yi-chan also furrowed his brows and transmitted back to her. "It's indeed strange that so many people were brought here. It might be related to the Eye of the Divine Sea hidden in this 32nd level. Let's ask them about their situation first." Yi-chan then spoke to the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God. "It doesn't matter much that we made it here, But since the two of you seniors have also arrived, have you discovered the reason why we were brought here? Upon hearing Yi Chen's words, the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang true god also remembered something crucial. They hurriedly said to Yi Chen and Taoist Zhang Yao, have you seen the 1,000-foot-tall giant sword that we're sitting around in meditation? We too were puzzled when we were first drawn in here, but then we discovered this 1,000-foot-tall giant sword. Approaching within 3 feet of it, we sensed something different. This 1,000-foot-tall giant sword, upon nearing within 3 feet, allowed us to receive special messages. Yi Chen, Taoist Zhang Yao, go within its 3-foot radius, and you'll understand. Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, upon hearing this, both looked towards the singularly existing towering 1,000-foot-tall giant sword in the center of this special space. When they first arrived, they had seen the giant sword surrounded by tens of thousands of martial artists in seated meditation, already sensing that it might be the key. Now, after hearing what the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang true god said, it turned out there indeed was something special about the giant sword. Let's go and take a look, said Yi Chen. Yi Chen took Zhang Yao's small hand and walked towards the giant sword. As soon as they stepped within a 3-foot radius of the giant sword, both their expressions changed. After a long while, they looked at each other with astonishment in their eyes. Indeed, just as the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang true god had said, approaching within 3 feet of the 1,000-foot-tall giant sword allowed them to receive special messages. And these special messages directly addressed Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, revealing that the Eye of the Divine Sea, sought after by countless martial artists, was within this giant sword. Not only the Eye of the Divine Sea, but there are even other things within this giant sword. Only those with the ability can enter the sword and have a chance to encounter them. This special message even goes on to say that as long as one is a sword cultivator, they can attempt to enter the giant sword, just wrap oneself with the unique sword chi of a sword cultivator, and they can try to enter. Although anyone can try, only those with a fate destined with this giant sword, and who truly have great talent in the way of sword cultivators, will be able to truly enter this giant sword. The special message also states that at this time, 8 people have entered the giant sword, but they have yet to find the Eye of the Divine Sea inside. The message further suggests that if one fails to enter the giant sword, they could sit in meditation near the giant sword, sense the sword chi emitted by the sword, practice the sword techniques contained within the sword chi, and after mastering those techniques, try again to enter. Through this special message transmitted from the giant sword, Yi Chen finally understood why so many sword cultivators were sitting in meditation near this giant sword. Clearly, these individuals were likely those who had tried and failed to enter the sword, thus being blocked outside. Yi Chen was even more astonished to discover that the Eye of the Divine Sea he and Zhang Yao had been seeking was actually hidden within this giant sword. Space. The third layer of space. Originally, the 32nd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace was a space for refinement, and now the special realm within the Sea of 10,000 Swords, another refined space of the Undersea Divine Palace, contained yet another special space within the giant sword space within the sword. 3 layers of space overlapped. Even now that Yi Chen had entered the Heavenly Saint Realm and studied the space law, he knew that the space law they practiced in the Heavenly Saint Realm could not touch upon this level of complexity. Clearly, the person who had created this special realm within the giant sword was an extraordinary figure. Yi Chen, it looks like we, too, must try to enter this space within the giant sword. Glancing at each other and seeing the surprise in each other's eyes, Zhang Yao said to Yi Chen, "Yeah, Yaoer, this special message says that 8 people have already gone in, and they haven't found the Eye of the Divine Sea yet. We have to give it our all and attempt to enter and look for the Eye of the Divine Sea." Yi Chen nodded to Zhang Yao. "Just don't know if we'll be able to enter successfully." Zhang Yao looked at Yi Chen with a light laugh, her beautiful eyes shining with trust. "Whether we can enter or not, we have to try. But I believe that you will definitely be able to enter." Zhang Yao could not forget the talent that Yi Chen had shown when they were braving the 1,000 Lotus Cave abode together. Nor could she forget the talent that Yi Chen had demonstrated along their journey. If Yi Chen could not enter, then probably none of the countless martial artists of the minor spirit realm and the 33 continents could. "Yaoer, you can't say that. It also depends on the fate we have with this giant sword, Yichun said, gently pinching Jiang Yao's delicate nose with a smile. But jokes aside, when they looked at the giant sword again, both their expressions became serious. After all, this was about the Eye of the Divine Sea. Even though together they already possessed 19 eyes of creation, the friends and family caught in the great cataclysm outnumbered these 19. So of course they strove to find the Eye of the Divine Sea. Seeing Yichun and Jiang Yao step into the three-zhang range around the giant sword and gaze intently at it, tens of thousands of sword cultivators nearby knew that these two newcomers were probably going to attempt to enter the giant sword. At this moment, a 5 Tribulations real God Elder stepped forward and said to the two, "Fellow cultivators, this giant sword is not easy to enter. I was one of the first to be brought here when the special message from the sword clearly indicated that not a single person had entered it yet. Later, I personally saw countless people try to enter the giant sword, all failing. Even the last 8 who managed to enter the sword did so only after several failures, by sitting in meditation near the sword to cultivate, and then retrying," said the elder. As the 5 Tribulations real God Elder spoke, the other sword cultivators also sighed and shook their heads, their expressions filled with pain. "It seems our abilities are still lacking. Even those 8 who entered haven't found the Eye of the Divine Sea. It's truly saddening to have the treasure right before our eyes yet unable to obtain it. They had all failed in their previous ventures in the Undersea Divine Palace and had no eyes of creation at all. The Eye of the Divine Sea was their one and only hope of escaping the impending cataclysm. Experience new tales on Novelbin.com. When they had just been brought here and heard that the giant sword contained the Eye of the Divine Sea, they were ecstatic. Yet, after their continuous attempts and failures, they were deeply disheartened. As the time left before the cataclysmic cleansing grew shorter, their hearts sank further. Seeing the sword cultivators shaking their heads, sighing, expressing pain and sorrow, the 3-eyed skeleton next to them directly exclaimed, "Don't sigh just yet. Let fellow cultivators Yichun and Jiang Yao try first." Chapter 608- Meditation Cushion, Blue Light, Buddhist Image. The 3-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God certainly hold great hopes for Yichun. They both were well aware of the grand battle in the southern territory of the barbaric wilderness continent and the battle between Yichun's group and the true gods of the Flying Spirit clan. At that time, facing the imminence of the Great Purge Cataclysm, it was Qing Shuang True God who guided Huameyer to seek help from the ancient emperor of the Yen clan, eventually leading him to descend to the lower realm to assist Yichun. Afterward, from what they learned from Huameyer, when they heard that Yichun had the audacity to directly confront countless true gods from both the Flying Spirit clan and Vermilion Bird clan led by their respective elder chieftains, the 3-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang True God were utterly astonished. Thinking back on Yichun's experiences at the 5 Elements Mountain and recalling how he was mysteriously transported to the legendary Minor Pole Sky, and now, considering how Yichun had breached into the 32nd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace by his own strength, the duo readily recognized Yichun as a young man endowed with true prowess and talent, arguably a peerless prodigy seldom seen across countless eras in the 33 continents of the Minor Spirit realm and the Lower realm. For them, their attempt to enter the colossal sword had failed, but such a peerless prodigy might well succeed where they did not. Of course, they wanted to first watch Yichun and Jiang Yao make their attempt. Hearing the words of the 3-eyed skeleton, the other sword cultivators also turned their gaze towards Yichun and Jiang Yao, halting their lamentation. They too remembered that these two newcomers were different from them. They had failed their challenge in the Undersea Divine Palace and were then mysteriously drawn to this place. But these two youngsters had managed to come here on their own accord. In front of this giant sword, they had been the unsuccessful ones. But that didn't mean these two youngsters would also fail. Let them have a try. Eye of the Divine Sea. Although the one who obtains it will reap the greatest benefits, the obtainer would also save everyone trapped in the calamity of the Great Purge. If these two Tao companions can enter the colossal sword and obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea, it would be a tremendous good news for us. They would be our great benefactors. I hope these two Tao companions can create a miracle. Tens of thousands of sword cultivators, regardless of being in the heavenly saint realm or the true God realm, all looked towards Yichun and Zhang Yao. In their anxious and hopeful gazes, Yichun and Zhang Yao exchanged glances. Yichun said softly to Zhang Yao, "Yaoer, let's start trying." Zhang Yao nodded slightly. Immediately following, the two leapt up, soaring into the void. As they moved, the vast sword chi suddenly burst forth from their bodies, enveloping them completely within its surging power. Seeing their actions, the tens of thousands of sword cultivators left watched tensely, their eyes fixated on the two figures in the void. Although everyone who had tried to directly enter the colossal sword before had failed, they still harbored a glimmer of hope for these two youngsters who managed to directly reach the 32nd floor. Within the piercing gazes of the crowd, as Yichun and Zhang Yao, shrouded by sword chi, began to communicate with the colossal sword using the method dictated by its special message. The giant sword that stood 1,000 zhang tall started emitting halos of light, one after another. Bang! 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 With the halos flashing, it seemed as if the sound of sword cries stirred within them. Seeing these halos and hearing the sword cries emanating from within, the tens of thousands of sword cultivators looking up at Yichun and Zhang Yao could not help but stir uproariously. These halos were the very same phenomena previously triggered by the 8 individuals who entered the colossal sword, after practicing the swordsmanship contained within the sword chi of the great sword and attempting again successfully. Those 8 individuals had failed their first attempt at entering the colossal sword but, after practicing the swordsmanship found within the great sword chi several times, they entered the sword and triggered such a scene. Yichun and Zhang Yao, without having practiced the swordsmanship of the colossal sword chi, directly induced such phenomena, which naturally excited the tens of thousands of sword cultivators into exclaiming out loud. All of them, in their attempts to enter the colossal sword, had never induced this kind of phenomenon. Could it be that these two youngsters really will succeed in their first attempt to enter the colossal sword? The 5 Tribulations True God Elder who had stepped forward earlier watched Yichun and Zhang Yao enveloped in sword chi in disbelief. It looks like they will succeed. More sword cultivators, observing the successive halos emanating from the colossal sword, felt a premonition rising within them. Just when the old true god of 5 calamities couldn't believe his eyes, when countless sword cultivators had a premonition, and when the 3-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang true god's eyes were shining brightly. Swoosh! Swoosh! Following 2 extremely faint sounds, a series of halos on the giant sword suddenly formed 2 huge bubbles, instantly enveloping the figures of Yichun and Zhang Yao. Then, amidst the illusions, Yichun and Zhang Yao were completely drawn into the giant sword. They really went in. Seeing Yichun and Zhang Yao completely disappear from the outside of the giant sword, the tens of thousands of sword cultivators present all stood up. As they approached the giant sword, they all heard its message. The number of people who had entered the giant sword had reached 10. Besides the 8 who had entered earlier, these 2 new entrants were unmistakably Yichun and Zhang Yao. 2 more Taoists have arrived. As Yichun and Zhang Yao disappeared from the outside of the giant sword, stirring the tens of thousands of sword cultivators outside into an uproar of excitement. Yichun and Zhang Yao, who had just been drawn into the giant sword, immediately heard a voice. And when the 2 of them opened their eyes, they saw 8 people looking towards them. Clearly, these 8 were the ones who had entered the space within the giant sword earlier, and it was one of them who had just called out to them. Yichun and Zhang Yao's gazes swept over these 8 people, and then towards the newly entered space within the giant sword. Both had thought that the space inside the giant sword would be vast, but to their surprise, the space inside was just a small Buddhist hall of only 100 zhang in radius. In this small Buddhist hall, aside from the 8 people who had entered before them and were now looking at them, Yichun also noticed a small meditation cushion fit for one person to sit cross-legged. In front of the cushion was a small incense table with 2 green lamps lit upon it. Behind the incense table, directly facing the cushion, on the foremost wall of the Buddhist hall, there was a painting of Buddha radiating a faint smile. Yichun had not expected that the space within the giant sword would be like this. It appeared to be a tranquil meditation place under the dim light of ancient lamps, This tranquil meditation place contains the Eye of the Divine Sea. Yi-chan remembered the message from the giant sword earlier that mentioned the Eye of the Divine Sea was hidden within the giant sword, but clearly, he didn't see anything related to the Eye of the Divine Sea here. Yi-chan looked at Zhang Yao, who also shook her head. Obviously, Zhang Yao hadn't discovered the Eye of the Divine Sea either. While Yi-chan and Zhang Yao were surveying this newly entered space within the giant sword, the 8 who had entered before them approached Yi-chan and Zhang Yao. Fellow Taoists, you both seem unfamiliar. Are you martial artists from the minor spirit realm or one of the 33 continents of the lower realm? Asked an elder among the 8, addressing Yi-chan and Zhang Yao. Although both Yi-chan and Zhang Yao's auras remained at the heavenly saint realm, while all 8 were true gods of the true god realm, the 8 held no contempt for Yi-chan and Zhang Yao. They who had entered the giant sword first knew how difficult it was to enter this space. That these 2 young people could enter here showed that they clearly had some ability unknown to the rest. I am Yi-chan, and this is my companion Zhang Yao. We are from the barbaric wilderness continent, Yi-chan said with a smile to the elder, while also inquiring, May I know, have you made any discoveries since arriving here? So it's Taoist Yi-chan and Taoist Zhang Yao. The elder saluted Yi-chan and Zhang Yao with a cupped fist, meanwhile introducing the identities of their group. Upon this introduction, Yi-chan and Zhang Yao both felt a stir in their hearts. The elder who spoke was none other than the chieftain of the Northern Ming clan, one of the 6 ancient clans of the minor spirit realm. Among the 7 people beside him, a black-clothed elder was in fact the chieftain of the Blood God clan, another of the 6 ancient clans. Yi-chan and Zhang Yao hadn't expected that these 2 ancient clans, which bore ancient grudges and lived beside the Northern Ming Divine Sea, would now be peacefully coexisting here. It seemed that for the sake of the Eye of the Divine Sea, these 2 great ancient clans had temporarily set aside their enmity and had come together in search of the treasure. Experience exclusive tales on Novelbin.com. In addition to the Northern Ming clan senior chieftain and the Blood God clan senior chieftain, both true gods of 8 calamities, the other 6 were also from the Northern Ming and Blood God clans. Chapter 609-. The Fourth Dimension. Yi-chan was wondering why the 8 people who entered the giant sword space were all from the Baiming clan and the Blood God clan. When the Baiming clan chieftain finished introducing the 8 people's identities, he finally mentioned to Yi-chan and Zhang Yao the situation regarding the search for the Eye of the Divine Sea. 2 fellow Taoists, our 8 people have turned this place upside down, but have not found the Eye of the Divine Sea. We speculate that it is very likely related to the ancient Buddha painting hanging on the wall above this small hall. However, this is merely speculation. We can't discern anything unusual from this ancient painting, said the chieftain of the Baiming clan, his frustration evident. They were much stronger than the tens of thousands of sword cultivators outside and had finally broken into this giant sword space. However, after getting in, they couldn't find anything, which left them quite disheartened. Not only the Baiming clan chieftain was frustrated, the remaining 7, including the chieftain of the Blood God clan and the other 6, also had particularly ugly expressions on their faces. They were considered powerful entities in the minor spirit realm, but ever since they arrived at the undersea divine palace of the Baiming Divine Sea, they encountered obstacles at every turn and found their own strengths lacking. Even the chieftains of the Blood God clan and Baiming clan, both of whom were 8th Tribulation's true gods, felt that their own strengths were utterly insufficient. Previously, they were transported to an outer minor world and managed to enter this giant sword space, briefly regaining some confidence. But finding nothing in this space further deflated their spirits. At this point, they understood that even as powerhouses of the minor spirit realm, as 8th Tribulation's true gods and masters of ancient clans, they were powerless in the grand scheme laid out by the forces of the universe and greater beings. Hearing that the Baiming clan chieftain and his party had come up empty-handed, without even a clue about the Eye of the Divine Sea, Yi-chan nodded. If the Eye of the Divine Sea were that easy to find, it wouldn't be the most precious item in the undersea divine palace, capable of allowing all martial artists to escape the great catastrophe. Yi-chan glanced at Zhang Yao, and the 2 of them walked around the small hall, searching for any possible clues. The hall had few items: a small meditation cushion for one to sit cross-legged, an incense table, 2 green lamps, and a Buddha painting. These items had already been thoroughly examined by the 8 people who came before, without any unusual findings. But they had made their investigation, and of course Yi Chun and Jiang Yao would carry out their own. As Yi Chun approached the Buddha painting, initially, he did not notice anything unusual about the Buddha depicted with a faint smile. However, when he looked closely at the Buddha's eyes, he suddenly sensed a slight movement within the star tower in his chi-si. This image of the Buddha truly has something special about it. Yi Chun was shocked inside. Although the star tower calmed down after a slight tremor, Yi Chun had already noticed this subtle movement. The star tower. It was something left to him by ZG Star Lord, a supreme divine artifact containing the primordial star scripture. The fact that this Buddha painting could cause a reaction in the star tower indicated it was no ordinary item. With immense focus, Yi Chun gazed at the Buddha painting. As if the movement of the star tower caused a change in the painting, the moment Yi Chun looked at it again, the Buddha painting emitted a Buddhist light unseen to all but Yi Chun, who could both see and sense it. This light enveloped Yi Chun completely the instant it appeared. Yi Chun suddenly felt all the swordsmanship intentions, laws, and divine arts related to his sword cultivation incredibly agitated and started evolving on their own. Even the 3 forbidden moves of Yi Chun's purple lightning divine sword. He was comprehending purple light, extreme lightning, and purple lightning began to evolve in the presence of the Buddhist light. It should be noted that Yi Chun had only managed to comprehend the second forbidden move, extreme lightning, up until now. He hadn't grasped the ultimate forbidden move, purple lightning, which could unleash all the hidden prohibitions of the purple lightning divine sword. But now, before his eyes, purple lightning was performing its act as if an unparalleled expert was demonstrating the move, conveying its essence to Yi Chun. In just an instant, Yi Chun had fully comprehended the third forbidden move of the purple lightning divine sword. The ultimate move, purple lightning. Full comprehension of purple lightning meant that Yi Chun could unleash the most powerful strength of the purple lightning divine sword, nearly doubling its power to the level of a heaven-reaching divine artifact. This filled Yi Chun's heart with unparalleled excitement. What Yi Chun did not expect was that after all the sword techniques he practiced had evolved under the Buddhist light, the light suddenly burst forth and completely absorbed Yi Chun from within the Buddha hall, causing him to vanish. Not only did Yi Chun experience something unusual while viewing the Buddha painting, but Jiang Yao, who was sitting cross-legged on the small cushion, also sensed something off. As soon as she sat down, the feather given to her by Mrs. He for protection began to tremble. Like Yi Chun, all the swordsmanship she cultivated began evolving in her mind. Even the sword divine arts passed down to her by the 9 female divine venerables, which she had just begun to practice, were being cultivated. Eventually, the small cushion emitted a divine light, enveloping Jiang Yao completely and causing her to disappear without a trace from within the hall, just like Yi Chun. Yi Chun and Jiang Yao disappeared almost simultaneously. The clan leaders of both the Baiming clan and the Blood God clan, along with their 6 other companions, were observing Yi Chun and Jiang Yao as they investigated several items in the Buddha hall. They thought that, like themselves, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao would fail to find anything and have to leave dejectedly. However, they were shocked to witness Yi Chun, who was standing and observing the Buddha painting, and Jiang Yao, who was sitting cross-legged on the meditation cushion, suddenly disappear from sight. Where have the 2 fellow Taoists gone? The 8 individuals hastily retreated several steps, their expressions changing. Only after a moment did they approach the spot where Yi Chun and Jiang Yao had vanished. Even the clan leader of the Blood God clan seated himself on the meditation cushion just like Jiang Yao had earlier, but regardless of what they did, the feeling remained the same as when they previously investigated the objects, with no anomalies detected. The items that seemed to have no anomalies had, just moments ago during Yi Chun and Jiang Yao's inspection, caused the 2 of them to disappear. This left the 8 of them feeling quite bewildered. Finally, a thought flashed through the mind of the Baiming clan's clan leader, and he exclaimed, "The 4th layer of space." There must be a fourth layer of space hidden here, which is why we couldn't find the Eye of the Divine Sea. The Eye of the Divine Sea is likely within the fourth layer of space. Your journey continues with Novelbin. Calm. It seems that for some reason our fellow Taoists Yichun and Zhang Yao have triggered the transmission prohibition of the fourth layer of space. They may have entered the fourth layer of space. The fourth layer of space. As soon as the Baiming clan's clan leader mentioned this, the other 7 people felt a tremor in their hearts as well. They never imagined that, on top of the already existing first layer of space in the Undersea Divine Palace, plus the second heaven and earth space on the 32nd layer hidden beneath the sea of 10,000 swords that had absorbed tens of thousands of sword cultivators, and the third layer of space in the giant sword space, there would also be a fourth layer of space hidden within the giant sword space. The fourth layer of space. Not only were the 8 clan leaders of the Baiming clan shaking with realization inside the giant sword space, but Yichun, too, shouted in surprise as he felt a force pulling him and suddenly found himself in a vast, desolate plain after the world around him had spun and changed, bringing him back to consciousness. This vast wasteland emitted an incredibly ancient and majestic aura. Remembering the Buddha's light that had enveloped him and the transformations of swordsmanship and the prohibitions of the purple lightning divine sword in his mind before he was pulled away, Yichun understood that this space, hidden deeper than the giant sword space, was anything but ordinary. Perhaps, the Eye of the Divine Sea may truly be hidden inside. As Yichun was lost in thought, Zhang Yao's voice rang in his ears. Yichun! Yichun saw that Zhang Yao was flying swiftly toward him from not far away. Zhang Yao had also been pulled into this space. Yichun rushed towards Zhang Yao. After explaining the strange occurrences they had each experienced in the small Buddha hall, both of them looked up towards the mysterious wasteland of the fourth layer of space. Yichun and Zhang Yao knew that perhaps all the secrets were hidden right here. Just as Yichun and Zhang Yao were preparing to thoroughly search the wasteland, a sound seemed to echo through heaven and earth, like the distant tolling of a Buddhist bell or the resonant cry of a great sword. They saw 3 figures appear above the wasteland, not far above them in the sky. People were present in this deeply hidden fourth layer of space, and not just one person but 3. When Yichun and Zhang Yao saw the 3 figures, they were already filled with disbelief. But as they made out the figure on the far right, Yichun and Zhang Yao both cried out in shock, "Heavenly Saint Qianji!" They couldn't have imagined that they would see Heavenly Saint Qianji, whom they had once seen as a shadowy figure in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. Hidden deep beneath the 32nd layer of the Sea of 10,000 Swords of the Undersea Divine Palace, and even deeper within the 4th layer of the giant sword space. In the 1st layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, Yichun hadn't found Heavenly Saint Qianji and thought that he, like those of the Divine Phoenix clan who had been taken away by the Black Crow God King and disappeared, and like Heavenly Saint Dekong who had vanished in the mysterious ice cave, might have been blocked by a mysterious force greater than the Baiming Divine Sea and failed to arrive at the Undersea Divine Palace. Yichun could not have imagined that he would see Heavenly Saint Qianji here. No, he could no longer simply be called a Heavenly Saint. His realm had transformed into the True God realm, and within that realm, he had reached the level of the 9 tribulations True God. This was truly unbelievable. When they heard Yichun and Zhang Yao exclaim, "Heavenly Saint Qianji" out loud, 1,000 Extremes True God, no longer just Heavenly Saint, also looked at them curiously. 1,000 Extremes True God had not expected these 2 youths to recognize him. However, at that moment 1,000 Extremes True God did not speak. He stood with utmost respect beside the figure in the middle, just like the little child on the far left. The figure in the middle was a gaunt old man, dressed in monk's robes with 12 incense scars on his head, and Buddhist beads in hand, clearly a Buddhist monk. What shocked Yichun and Zhang Yao even more was that this monk's aura surpassed that of the divine venerable level, almost comparable to that of Mrs. He. This monk was a powerhouse of the sovereign realm. At that moment, this formidable sovereign realm figure looked at Yichun and Zhang Yao and then at 1,000 Extremes True God beside him, and said with a smile, "Unexpectedly, you 2 youngsters happen to know my newly accepted disciple. It seems that we are indeed quite fated."
Chapter 610 LDQ du.
Yichun bowed with cupped fists to this sovereign realm powerhouse, as well as to the thousand extremes true God beside him. When this junior was in the true Chi realm, I visited the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, left on the barbaric wilderness continent by Senior Thousand Extremes, and saw his illusionary phantom. I even received great help from the illusionary phantom of Senior Thousand Extremes, so I recognized Senior Thousand Extremes. Upon hearing Yi Chun explain his acquaintance with the Thousand Extremes true God, the Sovereign Realm powerhouse smiled and nodded. So that's the case. However, the complexion of the Thousand Extremes true God drastically changed as he quickly asked Yi Chun, "You've been to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode? Have you seen Lian Yu?" Zhang Yao and I obtained the twin flying swords from the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, and we promised the illusionary phantom left in the abode that we would deal with Heavenly Saint Tuashan when we were strong enough. Now, we have captured Heavenly Saint Tuashan and brought him back to the Thousand Lotus Cave abode. And we have also found some medicine to help Heavenly Saint Lian Yu awaken. I'm afraid that by the time we can emerge from this great cleansing cataclysm, Heavenly Saint Lian Yu will likely have awakened, Yi Chun said to the Thousand Extremes true God as he and Zhang Yao exchanged a glance. While speaking, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao also released their life-bound flying swords, Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, for the Thousand Extremes true God to see. The Thousand Lotus Cave abode was the place where Yi Chun and Zhang Yao met, and it was also the site of their first significant opportunity in martial cultivation. Encountering the true person of the Thousand Extremes true God here, they naturally had to share these matters with him. When he saw the Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water twin flying swords, the Thousand Extremes true God recognized them at a glance. Weren't they precisely the pair of flying swords he and Heavenly Saint Lian Yu had obtained back then? He later went to the minor spirit realm to find medicinal herbs to treat Lian Yu's illness and left the twin flying swords in the Thousand Lotus Cave abode, intending to leave them for someone predestined. The Thousand Extremes true God could never have imagined that this young man and woman before him would be the ones to obtain these twin flying swords. Stay updated via novelbin.com. Moreover, this young man and woman had avenged a great grudge for him by capturing Elder Tuashan and starting to heal Lian Yu. Thinking of Heavenly Saint Lian Yu, the Thousand Extremes true God's breath shook slightly. Seeing the state of the Thousand Extremes true God, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao also grew intensely curious as to why he would appear in the Undersea Divine Palace and how he managed to break through to the Ninth Tribulation True God level in the Minor Spirit Realm while searching for medicinal herbs for Heavenly Saint Lian Yu. At that moment, the Sovereign Realm powerhouse glanced at the emotionally overwhelmed Thousand Extremes True God and at the curiously looking Yi Chun and Zhang Yao, then spoke. "It turns out you two youngsters have such a connection with my disciple. Speaking of which, my young disciple being able to become my apprentice also has to do with searching for medicinal herbs. During an occasional awakening while I was in seclusion, I surveyed the outside world from the depths of the Beiming Divine Sea and spotted my disciple waiting at the edge of the Beiming Divine Sea for treasures to emerge. At first, I thought he was just like the other treasure hunters. But decades later, when I woke again, I still found him searching for treasures, even trading the treasures he found for medicinal materials to treat injuries. It was then that I realized my disciple had come to the Beiming Divine Sea to save someone's life. Counting the time, it's been 124 years since I brought my disciple into the Beiming Divine Sea." When the Sovereign Realm powerhouse spoke to this point, the Thousand Extremes True God also knelt before the Sovereign Realm powerhouse. "I searched in the Minor Spirit Realm for hundreds of years, but alas, as only a heavenly saint, I couldn't obtain precious medicine to treat Lian Yu. I was fortunate that my master took me in as a disciple and taught me martial skills, promising that I could return after the great cleansing cataclysm ended. Furthermore, in just over 100 years, I transformed into a Ninth Tribulation True God. Unexpectedly, now Lian Yu has been treated by these two young friends. Through the words of the Thousand Extremes True God and the Sovereign Realm powerhouse, Yi Chun finally learned why the Thousand Extremes True God had not shown himself before and why he appeared in the Undersea Divine Palace, having transformed into a Ninth Tribulation True God. Apparently, he had been taken into the Beiming Divine Sea by this Sovereign Realm powerhouse more than 100 years ago to practice cultivation with this great figure. Rumor has it, not even God King Venerables could step into the Beiming Divine Sea where the seawater exists. Probably no one could imagine that there was such a sovereign realm powerhouse in the beaming divine sea, and that he also let a heavenly saint enter to cultivate before the great cleansing cataclysm. Thinking of this, Yi Chun became even more curious about the identity of this sovereign realm powerhouse. Yi Chun remembered that the murderous life form species in the undersea divine palace only had powerhouses up to the divine king realm, and that it was impossible for a sovereign realm guardian to exist there. Yi Chun heard from Jiang Yao that Mrs. He, the sovereign realm powerhouse, was in the undersea divine palace because she was carrying out Lord Emperor Yan's orders to preside over the great cleansing cataclysm. Moreover, only Mrs. He and those 9 female divine venerables presided over the great cleansing cataclysm, with no one else. Then who is this sovereign realm powerhouse? He's neither a guardian nor the one presiding over the great purge catastrophe. Who is he then, and why is he here? Moreover, the giant sword outside said, "The eye of the divine sea is right here." What is the connection between this sovereign realm powerhouse and the eye of the divine sea? Yi Chun had countless doubts in his mind. As if seeing through Yi Chun's confusion, the sovereign realm powerhouse smiled and said, "I am an ascetic cultivator who, in an effort to break through the sovereign realm, strives to reach higher levels. You may address me as Elder Ku. I am not the guardian of this place. After I requested to come here to cultivate from Lord Emperor Yan, who was in charge of the Divine Kingdom's interface and the lower interface's great purge catastrophe, I was allowed in. Of course, I have always practiced on the 32nd layer of the undersea divine palace. This time, the eye of the divine sea flowed into the 32nd layer just as I happened to awaken. So I came here to take charge of this matter with the eye of the divine sea. Certainly, if you go to the divine kingdom of the Wanmu Mountain after this, you will learn of my other identity. I was the Southern Territory King of the Wanmu Mountain's divine kingdom. However, the position of the Southern Territory King in the Divine Kingdom has now been passed on to my disciple. As for me, I have long since turned to Buddhism and devoted myself to arduous cultivation. Boom! The words of the sovereign realm powerhouse, Elder Kudu, completely shocked Yi Chun. He had not expected that this Elder Kudu would turn out to be the former Southern Territory King of the Divine Kingdom. My God! Doesn't that mean he was a renowned figure in the Wanmu Mountain's divine kingdom, just like the father of the little provincial princess, the East Territory King? No wonder he was a sovereign realm powerhouse. Yi Chun also remembered that when he encountered the last mirage left by the Icebound Temple's divine king in the main hall of the Icebound Temple, the Icebound divine king had said that he came from the circulation of Heaven Divine City in the southern territory of the Wanmu Mountain Divine Kingdom. He even asked Yi Chun to visit his family, friends, and descendants in the southern territory of the Divine Kingdom should he have the chance. Yi Chun had not expected that now, within the undersea divine palace, he would encounter the old Southern Territory King of the Divine Kingdom. What shocked Yi Chun even more was that such a prominent figure from the Divine Kingdom chose to practice asceticism in the North Dark Divine Sea and decided to convert to Buddhism, aiming to surge towards a higher realm from the sovereign realm. Renouncing the identity of the Southern Territory King and choosing thorough ascetic cultivation, as an ascetic cultivator, was indeed admirable. Have you, Senior, managed to break through the level beyond the sovereign realm?
Chen asked LD
Elder Ku shook his head and chuckled. Break through the level beyond the sovereign realm? That is not at all easy. I've been practicing asceticism here in the Undersea Divine Palace for millions of years and still haven't grasped that level. I have vowed that I would not leave the North Dark Divine Sea until I succeed in my realm breakthrough. I don't even know how many more years I will spend here. Towards the end, Elder Kudu's eyes did not reveal a hint of discouragement. Instead, they shone with even more intensity. Clearly, his determination would not be shaken by the lengthy fruitlessness of his cultivation. Hearing Elder Kudu say that he had been practicing asceticism for millions of years without a successful breakthrough, and that he intended to continue, Yi Chun and Jiang Yao looked at each other, and both involuntarily clicked their tongues in wonder. Millions of years. This was an age beyond Yi Chun and Jiang Yao's imagination. Although they had heard that upon reaching the divine venerable realm one would possess an exceedingly long lifespan, for youngsters who had only been cultivating for a dozen or so years, millions of years were just too remote, and the sovereign realm even more so. How long it would take them to reach that level was still unknown. Chapter 6:11, The Secret of the Eye of the Divine Sea. Alright, after talking so much about my little disciple and myself, it's time to discuss the matter of the Eye of the Divine Sea, Elder Ku-du said with a smile as he looked towards Yi-chan and Jiang Yao. You two kids, having made your way here, must be very eager to obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea, right? The Eye of the Divine Sea was related to a treasure that could allow all heavenly saints and true gods to escape the grand cleansing calamity. As the most precious treasure in the undersea divine palace, it was natural that Yi-chan and Jiang Yao wished to obtain it. Hearing Elder Ku-du's words, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao nodded repeatedly. Senior, do you have the Eye of the Divine Sea with you? How can we obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea? Jiang Yao spoke up and asked Elder Ku-du, find your next read at novelbin.com. Elder Ku-du laughed and said, I've set up numerous spatial barriers, allowing only those with fate to enter. The Baiming clan and the Blood God clan have practiced the sword techniques I disseminated outside, which is why I brought them and many other sword cultivators to the 32nd layer, to give them a chance to escape this great crisis. Unfortunately, they lacked the ability to make it to the innermost part, wasting my painstaking efforts. You too, to have made it here, it shows you have strength, and are likewise fated with the Eye of the Divine Sea. Of course, I wouldn't deceive you into coming here. Indeed, the Eye of the Divine Sea is within this space. Soon you'll have the chance to see it. Upon hearing Elder Ku-du's words, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao finally understood why tens of thousands of sword cultivators had been taken to the 32nd layer. It turned out they had been given a chance by Elder Ku-du, who had taught them sword techniques, to search for the Eye of the Divine Sea. And upon hearing that the Eye of the Divine Sea was right in this space and would soon be seen, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao grew even more excited. They had been searching for half a day, passing through 4 spatial barriers and finally arrived here. In this place, they not only met the Thousand Extremes true God, but also saw the elder prince of the southern province from the divine kingdom. Now, they even had the opportunity to encounter the Eye of the Divine Sea, which certainly made them feel that their efforts passing the numerous spatial barriers had not been in vain. Seeing the excited expressions on Yi-chan and Jiang Yao, Elder Ku-du smiled and said, Both of you have come here together, yet there is only one Eye of the Divine Sea. However, I must first tell you the secret of the Eye of the Divine Sea, so that the two of you can properly compete for it. Hearing Elder Ku-du's words, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao looked at each other and both smiled as they turned to Elder Ku-du. Senior, it doesn't matter who gets the Eye of the Divine Sea. While speaking, Jiang Yao was holding Yi-chan's hand tightly. Oh! Seeing how close Yi-chan and Jiang Yao were, Elder Ku-du paused for a moment and then nodded with a smile. It seems that not only did you obtain my disciple's twin flying swords, your relationship with each other is also quite special. Jiang Yao's face turned slightly red on being pointed out by Elder Ku-du, but she didn't let go of Yi-chen's hand at all. Alright, even though you two say it doesn't matter who gets the Eye of the Divine Sea, I've emerged from my seclusion to oversee the matter of the Eye of the Divine Sea, so I still need to tell you its secret, Elder Ku-du said, his expression turning unusually serious. Hearing Elder Ku-du continually mention the secret of the Eye of the Divine Sea, Yi-chan and Jiang Yao also became serious. Clearly, the Eye of the Divine Sea concealed something more significant, and it was likely related to its status as the most precious treasure of the undersea divine palace in the Baiming Divine Sea. Elder Ku-du continued, This lower plane's grand cleansing calamity is a natural selection process born from the lower plane itself, although Emperor Yen is able to arrange all affairs of the grand cleansing calamity. Saving oneself and everyone else still relies on your own strength to obtain the Eye of Creation and the Eye of the Divine Sea. Since the grand cleansing calamity involves natural selection, the weak may perish directly during the calamity, while the strong should not only suffer, the calamity will also grant them the ultimate reward. Apart from the countless opportunities left by Emperor Yen, the Eye of the Divine Sea is the most precious reward he left for you following the natural selection of the world. Not just the Eye of the Divine Sea, but in countless lower planes, the most precious items that can decipher and survive the grand cleansing calamity are also tied to the most valuable reward. And this most valuable reward is an eligibility to participate in the examination of the 9 great God academies of the Divine Kingdom. The Eye of the Divine Sea, along with the most precious items from other lower planes that are involved in the grand cleansing calamity, offer a reward of an eligibility slot. An eligibility to participate in the examination of the 9 great God academies of the Divine Kingdom? What are the 9 great divine institutes? Yichun and Zhongyao looked at Elder Kudu, knowing he would surely explain to them. As expected, Elder Kudu said, "The 9 great divine institutes are the most powerful 9 academies in the Divine Kingdom of 10,000 curtains, specializing in teaching cultivation. These 9 great divine institutes are vast with countless cultivation resources and insights. Even divine venerables of the sovereign realm preside over them. By entering these institutes, some people in less than 100 years have cultivated from the true God realm to the divine venerable realm. The 9 great divine institutes are places countless martial artists in the divine kingdom aspire to enter. There, one can receive the best guidance and the most precious resources, laying the most solid foundation for their cultivation. One can even stay within the institutes and cultivate incessantly, which is hugely beneficial for understanding the divine venerable and sovereign realms. Even I and the countless prominent figures of the current divine kingdom, including the Lord of the 10,000 Curtains divine kingdom, all emerged from these 9 great divine institutes. The divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains spans countless upper plane divine cities and lower plane star continents, attracting numerous divine kings from the lower planes to the divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains, a place that is already home to innumerable citizens. The entire divine kingdom possesses over millions of cultivation institutes. However, these 9 great divine institutes are by far the most formidable out of all the academies throughout the divine kingdom. Even many offspring of divine venerables don't have the chance to enter for cultivation, let alone secure a spot to participate in the assessments of the 9 great divine institutes. So tell me, is the opportunity to take part in the assessments of the 9 great divine institutes precious or not? Boom! 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 Yichun and Zhongyao were both deeply stirred. So it turned out that the secret behind the Eye of the Divine Sea, and its most precious reward was actually the chance to participate in the assessments of the 9 great divine institutes in the divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains. It turned out that the 9 great divine institutes were so powerful that one could cultivate to the God-King realm within them, or even have the chance to understand the divine venerable and sovereign realms. Yichun, you must seize this opportunity. After learning about the 9 great divine institutes, Zhongyao excitedly transmitted her voice to Yichun. She was about to follow Mrs. He to the 10,000 Beasts domain to cultivate the exclusive cultivation technique of the Feathered Spirit clan, and was worried about Yichun's cultivation. If Yichun could cultivate within the most powerful 9 great divine institutes in the entire divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains, learning alongside countless geniuses of the whole kingdom, competing with them, then Yichun's future achievements would be boundless. This opportunity with the 9 great divine institutes could let Yichun cultivate to the realms of the God King and even the divine venerable and sovereign realms, so naturally Zhongyao hoped he would seize it. Yichun was also profoundly moved. Although he had gained insights into the upper God King realm during his dreamlike training in the creation chessboard, Yichun was well aware of the immense resources required to cultivate to the upper God King realm. Even in that dreamlike world, he had exhausted countless resources. And such resources were evidently not available in the minor spirit realm and the 33 lower realms. Previously, Yichun had put the idea of going to the divine kingdom on hold due to his concerns for Zhongyao and his parents and family. But now, with Zhongyao heading to the 10,000 Beasts domain, Yichun, wanting to meet her again or even visit her in the 10,000 Beasts domain, surely needed to enhance his strength. Remaining in the 33 lower realms and in the minor spirit realm could not enable his continued growth. To advance to the levels of the upper God King or even the divine venerable and sovereign, he must cultivate in the divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains. And this Eye of the Divine Sea, linked to the once-in-a-lifetime chance to train at the precious 9 great divine institutes of the divine kingdom of 10,000 Curtains, naturally stirred Yichun, who wished to grasp this opportunity firmly. Chapter 612 Battle with the Ancient Beast. Seeing the expressions on Yichun and Zhangyao's faces, Elder Kudu knew that Zhangyao hoped Yichun would seize the eye of the Divine Sea, and Yichun, too, had become extremely interested in the grand reward of the eye of the Divine Sea. Elder Kudu smiled and then said, I have also told you the secret of the eye of the Divine Sea. The most precious reward behind the eye of the Divine Sea. Whoever among you wants to obtain it, can. But you will also need to have absolute strength to do so. Experience tales at Novel Bin. Calm. Keep in mind that over the years, through countless great purges and calamities, very few have managed to obtain the eye of the Divine Sea, which already speaks to the difficulty of achieving it. And this time, the eye of the Divine Sea has appeared on the 32nd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace, which makes obtaining it all the more challenging. The difficulty you faced to get here was considerable, and likewise, the difficulty to acquire the eye of the Divine Sea will be just as great. The words of Elder Kudu did not intimidate Yichun, who said to him, Senior, please advise on how to obtain the eye of the Divine Sea. Let alone the fact that the eye of the Divine Sea is connected to the precious opportunity to go to the Divine Kingdom and participate in the assessment for the 9 Great God Institutes. Even without this most valuable award, to help the true God Heavenly Saint beside him escape the mass extinction of the Great Purge, Yichun would not give up the chance to acquire the eye of the Divine Sea. No matter how difficult, he would strive to obtain it. He had already breached up to the 32nd floor of the 33 layers of the Undersea Divine Palace. He had even broken into the 4th-dimensional space hidden within the 32nd layer. Would he fear the remaining challenges? Observing Yichun's serious demeanor and the determined look in his eyes, Elder Kudu silently nodded in approval. This youth displayed a courageous and unyielding spirit. Elder Kudu said to Yichun, as I mentioned earlier, the eye of the Divine Sea's difficulty varies depending on where it appears in the Undersea Divine Palace. Appearing on the 32nd floor is one of the most challenging scenarios. Aside from the inherent difficulty of entering the 32nd floor, the greatest challenge is that to gain the eye of the Divine Sea from the 32nd floor, one must kill 100 ancient beasts each at the 5 tribulations true God level. 100 ancient beasts at the 5 tribulations true God level? This is the greatest challenge? Yichun thought he had heard wrong. After all, in the 13th floor of the Undersea Divine Palace, he faced the assault of more than 1,000 5 tribulations and 6 tribulations true God level demon creatures of the Flame Scorcher clan and had even slain thousands of them in succession. To slay ancient beasts at the 5 tribulations true God level? Yichun feels that is hardly a challenge at all. Could it be that the issue wasn't with the 5 tribulations true God level, but with the ancient beasts themselves? Could these ancient beasts have some special trait? As Yichun was puzzled, Zhangyao next to him was equally bewildered. When Elder Kudu spoke again, these 5 tribulations true God ancient beasts are not the same as the demon creatures with the combat power of 5 tribulations true gods. Although these ancient beasts are at the 5 tribulations true God level, their actual combat power is far stronger than many 9 tribulations true God demon creatures inside the Undersea Divine Palace. These ancient beasts, just like countless prodigies who can fight above their level, surpass their own realms in combat power. Forget these ancient beasts for now. Young man, if you have the chance to go to the Divine Kingdom someday, do not compare the true gods there with those of the minor spirit realm. You must understand that the true gods of the Divine Kingdom are not only very powerful in their practice of true Qi technique in the true Qi realm, but also extraordinarily strong in other aspects. Many 5 tribulations true gods of the Divine Kingdom are far superior to 9 tribulations true gods from this minor spirit realm. Elder Kudu's words made Yichun nod repeatedly. So that's how it is. Yichun was very clear about this, for he was able to combat 7 and 8 tribulations true gods in the mid-stage of Heavenly Saint because he cultivated stellar power from the primordial star scripture, and he also possessed the undying divine body and the icebound divine body, as well as divine soul category divine arts. Because of these techniques, Yichun far surpassed martial artists of the same level in the minor spirit realm and the 33 continents of the lower realm, even exceeding countless true gods. But this superiority only applied to the minor spirit realm and the 33 continents of the lower realm. When Yi Chun would face the formidable beings of the true God realm from the divine kingdom, many of his advantages would no longer be so apparent. The primordial star scripture, which might be a trump card surpassing even the sovereign level, indeed was extraordinarily powerful, but Yi Chun had only cultivated up to the 4th chapter and had not yet fully mastered it. And the divine body and divine soul techniques Yi Chun had cultivated would surely also exist among the true gods of the divine kingdom. Even some true gods, perhaps those taught by divine venerable or sovereign level beings, might possess techniques even more formidable than Yi Chun's. In that case, if Yi Chun wished to battle 8 tribulations true gods from the divine kingdom while in the mid-stage of heavenly saint, it would be nothing but a dream. Even if he encountered divine prodigies as exceptional as himself from the divine kingdom, he might need to be cautious even against lower-ranking true gods. While Yi Chun might surpass many in the divine kingdom, it certainly wouldn't be as effortless as it was in the minor spirit realm and the 33 continents of the lower realm, unless he further enhanced his techniques. After truly entering the divine kingdom, one must compete with the geniuses of the kingdom. At the very least, there must be no weaknesses, Yi Chun thought to himself. The greatest gap between him and the strong practitioners of the divine kingdom was likely the difference in their realms. This made Yi Chun feel an even greater sense of urgency to break through to the true God realm. As Yi Chun pondered, Elder Ku Du said, "This ancient beast of the 5 tribulations true God level was cultivated by a warrior of the divine venerable realm. Its true combat power surpasses that of an ordinary 9 tribulations true God. Thus, to slay 100 such ancient beasts is exceedingly difficult. Young lad, are you ready to take on this most difficult challenge and seize the eye of the divine sea?" Hearing that these 5 tribulations true God ancient beasts actually had combat power surpassing that of ordinary 9 tribulations true gods, and that he had to slay 100 of them, even Jiang Yao began to worry for Yi Chun. And Yi Chun took a deep breath himself. Previously, in his battle against the elder patriarch of the Flying Spirit clan, his combat power had not reached the level to fight an ordinary 9 tribulations true god without resorting to the method of Emperor Yan's triple flash triple kill. If it had been before, Yi Chun would not have been confident in slaying 100 such ancient beasts. But now Yi Chun had a new technique up his sleeve. He had not fully tested this technique yet, but now it was time to thoroughly put it to the test. Yi Chun said to Elder Ku Du, "Senior, I am ready. No matter how powerful those ancient beasts are, I want to give it a try." Seeing Yi Chun's expression, Elder Ku Du nodded his head. Whoosh! With a spread of his hand, a miniature ancient pagoda appeared in his palm. Within this ancient pagoda are contained the eye of the divine sea and 100 ancient beasts. Only by killing all 100 ancient beasts will you be able to obtain the eye of the divine sea. If you fail to kill these 100 ancient beasts, you may even lose your life inside. I'll ask you one last time, are you sure you want to challenge the tower, slay the ancient beasts, and seize the eye of the divine sea? Elder Ku Du lifted the pagoda, looking at Yi Chun as he spoke.
Yi Chun.
Jiang Yao looked at Yi Chun with concern as well. Even Tianji True God, who was nearby, began to worry for the young lad. Having followed Elder Ku Du in his cultivation, he naturally knew how formidable these ancient beasts cultivated by divine venerables from the divine kingdom could be. Although they were only 5 tribulations true God-level ancient beasts, their combat power was nothing to scoff at. Seeing the concerned looks from Jiang Yao and Tianji True God, Yi Chun smiled, nodding at Tianji True God and transmitting his voice to Jiang Yao. "It's all right, Yaoer. Even if I cannot defeat these ancient beasts, it's impossible for them to kill me. You've forgotten that I still have one use of Emperor Yan's 3 flashes 3 kills escape technique. If it comes to it, I'll simply flash out of there. Besides, I might not necessarily be defeated by these ancient beasts." Yi Chun then gazed directly at the purple lightning divine sword in his hands. Hearing Yi Chun's words, Jiang Yao nodded her head. She even took out the feather given to her by Mrs. He and handed it to Yi Chun, also telling him how to activate the feather. Jiang Yao said to Yi Chun, "Take this feather for safety's sake." When Elder Ku Du saw the feather Jiang Yao presented, A flash of recognition shone in his eyes. Of course, he recognized the sovereign-level power on the feather. This was a protective talisman created by a sovereign realm expert to safeguard oneself. All it required was activation. Elder Ku-Du also sensed the familiar power within the feather. Looking at Zhang Yao, he thought with some surprise, "It seems this young girl has had quite the opportunity to have met Mrs. He herself." Aside from his secluded cultivation, Elder Ku-Du had only observed the undersea divine palace when he collected the tens of thousands of sword cultivators for the 32nd layer. At that time, Zhang Yao was cultivating on the 33rd layer while Yi Chun was in the void celestial gourd. So Elder Ku-Du hadn't noticed the encounter between Zhang Yao, Mrs. He, and the 9 female divine venerables. While Elder Ku-Du reflected, Yi Chun also accepted the feather. He knew Zhang Yao's intentions. Without taking the feather, she would surely be extremely worried. However, Yi Chun did not plan to use the feather to either escape or slay enemies. First, Zhang Yao had mentioned that the feather could only be used against 3 opponents. Mrs. He intended to prevent Zhang Yao from becoming overly reliant on it, leaving only 3 chances for one-on-one combat. Given there were 100 ancient beasts to face, it clearly would not suffice, just like the 3 uses of Emperor Yan's 3 flashes 3 kills would not. Secondly, Yi Chun was eager to test the new technique he had just cultivated. After securing Mrs. He's divine feather, Yi Chun looked at Elder Ku-Du and said, "Senior, please open this ancient pagoda and let me enter to claim the Eye of the Divine Se." Seeing Yi Chun determined to enter the ancient pagoda and seize the Eye of the Divine Sea, Elder Ku-Du no longer hesitated. With a flicker of divine light from his hand, the tiny pagoda began to spin and grow before their eyes until it landed on the ground, transforming into a colossal pagoda. The grand doors of the pagoda swung open towards Yi Chun. Yi Chun gave Zhang Yao a reassuring smile, nodded at Thousand Mechanisms' True God and Elder Ku-Du, and then whooshed as he flew into the ancient tower. Chapter 613 – Bloody Battle at the Ancient Tower. Seeing Yi Chun fly into the ancient tower, even though she knew Yi Chun had the Emperor Yan's triple slash and the divine feather technique, Zhang Yao's delicate little face couldn't help but show concern. Beside Elder Ku-Du, the quiet little boy and the Thousand Extremes True God both turned their gaze to Elder Ku-Du. Elder Ku-Du nodded, smiled gently, and with a flick of his finger in the air, a screen of light appeared in the void. The screen revealed the scene inside the ancient tower. Looking at the screen, Yi Chun was already within the world of the ancient tower. The inner world of the ancient tower. It was a desolate wasteland. As soon as Yi Chun stepped into it, he saw 100 huge beasts lying on the ground. Could it be that these are the supremely powerful ancient beasts? Yi Chun sized up the 100 beasts, noticed that each truly possessed the aura of a 5th Calamity True God. But their surging combat power was clearly different from that of ordinary 5th Calamity True Gods. The sense of threat to Yi Chun was even stronger than the one brought by the former chieftains of the Flying Spirit Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan. And these huge beasts were also quite strange in appearance, as each beast exuded an indescribable ancient aura. Each beast was over 200 zhang long and resembled the divine lions of ancient legends, with a strong and powerful body, mysterious cold light shining from their divine eyes, and their enormous lion heads were crowned with long manes that glimmered with divine light. But there was one unusual trait. These beasts that resembled lions had tails like divine pythons, complete with a serpent-headed tip on each tail. Divine python lions. If a warrior from the divine kingdom were to recognize this species, they would know that these fierce ancient creatures were bred from ancient blood remnants on a stone tablet. Battle prowess unmatched by fierce ancient beasts. Yi Chun also saw a crystal-clear blue spherical crystal hovering in the void behind the 100 giant ancient beasts, shining down on what lay below like an eye that could penetrate anyone's mind. Was this sparkling clear blue spherical crystal none other than the Eye of the Divine Sea, the supremely desired object seen on the rule talisman for warriors who entered the undersea divine palace, an object coveted by countless people. At that moment, this Eye of the Divine Sea blue crystal was enveloped in powerful restrictions emanating an energy that even made Yi Chun shudder. clearly far surpassing the restriction power Yi Chun could currently comprehend. To break these restrictions and obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea, it seemed that one would have to obey the rule and slay 100 ancient beasts. The Eye of the Divine Sea, right behind these 100 ancient beasts, within the 32nd layer of space in the Undersea Divine Palace. Looking at the Eye of the Divine Sea, Yi Chen's breath tightened. As long as he could kill the 100 ancient beasts in front of him, then this pinnacle treasure allowing all warriors to escape the cataclysm, this pinnacle treasure granting the right to participate in the Divine Kingdom's 9 Great Godly Institutes examinations, would be his. As Yi Chun was examining the ancient beasts and the Eye of the Divine Sea, the 100 beasts lying on the wasteland, as if sensing an intruder entering their territory, all stood up in an instant with a series of thunderous movements. The aura emanating from the 100 beasts suddenly burst forth, filling the entire wasteland with endless killing intent. In the next instant, the 100 ancient beasts, like a sheet of rain, charged madly towards Yi Chun. 100 ancient beasts with combat strength surpassing that of a 9th calamity true god. This terrifying onslaught would have likely caused real gods from the minor spirit realm to die from sheer fear. Even the previously encountered chieftains of the Flying Spirit Clan and Vermilion Bird Clan, 9 calamity true gods themselves, would have been terrified to their core. This Eye of the Divine Sea challenge proved to be the most difficult in the Undersea Divine Palace, inconceivably tough. Seeing the soaring ancient beast aura charging towards him, Yi Chen's expression immediately turned grave. Then, with a swoosh, Yi Chun drew his purple lightning divine sword. Before, Yi Chun did not feel confident fighting against a 9th calamity true god. But since he had just comprehended the 3rd killing move of the purple lightning divine sword, the ultimate forbidden sword technique, purple lightning, he now possessed the means to battle beings of this level of combat strength. The ultimate forbidden sword technique, purple lightning, could unleash all of the hidden restrictions in the purple lightning divine sword, transforming its power to the level of a heaven-reaching divine artifact. Being akin to the level of a divine king, Yi Chun certainly dared to clash with these ancient beasts. Whoosh! Read new chapters at novelbin.com. Sword in hand, Yi Chun began to furiously channel true chi and combat strength into the purple lightning divine sword, triggering hundreds of zhong of radiant purple arcs that pierced the sky. At this moment, the dozen or so ancient beasts closest to Yi Chun had already lunged towards him. Whoosh! 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 In an instant, Yi Chen's figure danced through the air, soaring into the void. He erupted with 1,000 zhong tall astral power and, at the same time, the hundreds of zhong of radiant purple arcs emitted from his purple lightning divine sword rapidly retracted into the sword. Following this, Yi Chun, wielding the purple lightning divine sword, turned to face the oncoming ancient beast closest to him and with a sudden swing, unleashed a sword strike. In that instant, the dazzling spectrum previously absorbed into the sword burgeoned from the purple lightning divine sword with a might that swelled to dozens of times its size, and burst forth once again. This sword strike, unstoppable. This sword strike was Yi Chen's strongest technique he could muster now. With one slash, 1,000 zhong long sword rainbow, like peerless purple lightning, cleaved through the sky, its sword chi piercing through, grinding everything to nothingness. In the end, it fell directly upon the ancient beast closest to Yi Chun. Spurt. Even though this ancient beast's strength had surpassed that of a common 9 tribulations true god, it was still directly slain by Yi Chun with one strike from the heaven-reaching divine artifact in the midst of the arena. Boom! At the moment that ancient beast was slain, a restriction on the distant Eye of the Divine Sea directly shattered. The slaying of the ancient beast and the breaking of the restriction on the Eye of the Divine Sea left Yi Chun no time to feel joy, as more ancient beasts had already pounced in front of him. And at this moment, Yi Chun was powerless to stop them. The previous purple lightning ultimate sword technique had almost completely drained Yi Chen's strength in one go, leaving him with only enough cultivation and combat power to use the ultimate move of the purple lightning divine sword once. Boom! 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 In just a moment, 5 ancient beasts lunged fiercely before Yi Chen, their massive paws thundering down in a smack, sending Yi Chen flying tens of thousands of zhong, violently crashing into the ground, his body shattering layer by layer, blood spilling all over. Outside the ancient tower, seeing Yi Chen conjure the sword technique and instantly slay an ancient beast, Thousand Extremes true god and the young boy both gasped in amazement. They had never expected that this youth in the middle stage of heaven's sanctity was also a supreme talent capable of combat beyond his realm. And it was not merely a simple cross-realm battle. This youth had managed at the realm of middle stage heaven's sanctity to possess a fighting strength that matched an ancient beast surpassing a 9 tribulations true god. This degree of crossing realms, even in the divine kingdom, would definitely belong to a truly remarkable talent. Many divine envoys of the divine kingdom would likely vie to cultivate such a talent. Not only were Thousand Extremes true god and the young boy shocked, but Elder Kudu was somewhat trembling as well. He murmured, "This young warrior actually possesses such a formidable killing move. It seems that he truly has the qualifications to go to the 9 great divine institutes of the divine kingdom for cultivation. However, it's a pity his realm is too low. I'm afraid his combat power won't support such a powerful killing move." No sooner had Elder Kudu's voice fallen than Yi Chen within the ancient tower was violently smacked by 5 ancient beasts and sent flying tens of thousands of zhong, his flesh torn and blood oozing everywhere. This sight caused both Thousand Extremes true god and the young boy to cry out in alarm. And Jiang Yao, even more anxious, shouted, "Yi Chen!" Jiang Yao was shocked by Yi Chen's powerful combat strength as she saw him slay an ancient beast. But Yi Chen was facing 100 ancient beasts of that caliber, not just one. Now, seeing that the remaining ancient beasts were all pouncing towards Yi Chen, and that he was exhausted, Jiang Yao was so worried she almost wanted to fly into the ancient tower, regardless of everything else. Just as Jiang Yao's mind went blank, Elder Kudu waved his hand broadly, a power enveloping Jiang Yao and halting her movement. At the same time, Elder Kudu let out a light exclamation. "Don't panic yet. This young man still has some tricks up his sleeve. He still has tricks." Thousand Extremes true god and the young boy both looked towards Yi Chen on the screen. Jiang Yao too looked towards Yi Chen, her eyes brimming with tears. To their surprise, Yi Chen's body, which had been battered to the point where his flesh was torn and blood streaming, was suddenly healing at an incredible speed. In an instant, he had completely recovered to his original state. At the same time, Yi Chen reached out and grabbed a bundle of true god talismans, appearing directly in his hand. Yi Chen clenched his fist, and the peerless power of the true god surged wildly towards him. This boundless power of the true god, when added up, was incredibly powerful, perhaps far surpassing a 9 tribulations true god. If an ordinary warrior were to absorb so much power at once, their body would likely explode into pieces and die. But Yi Chen, he could withstand all that power. Seeing this scene, Elder Kudu exclaimed in admiration. The youth's true chi was already extremely powerful, and to think, his willpower and physical techniques are just as formidable. His previous severe injury was fully endured by his willpower, and moreover, he stimulated a potent divine body technique that instantaneously healed the wounds. This divine body technique is likely the famous, undying divine body technique renowned, even in the grand divine kingdom of Wanmu Mountain. Elder Kudu's speculations were correct. Yi Chen relied on the undying divine body and the icebound divine body to withstand the brutal blow from the 5 ancient beasts, and the true god talismans in his hand were from that multitude obtained from the main hall of the icebound temple. At this moment, the exhausted Yi Chen could only rely on these true god talismans. He certainly had to infuse the power of the true god talismans into his body to battle these ancient beasts once more. Chapter 614- Great Tremor. Boom! 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 Everything unfolded in the blink of an eye. Just as Yi Chen was sent flying tens of thousands of feet away, nearly dying, and the remaining ancient beasts saw that Yi Chen had not been killed in one move and once again pounced to finish him, Yi Chen absorbed a large amount of power from the true god talisman. His combat power within instantly recovered to its peak, and even surpassed his original peak. Next, With the purple lightning in his hand, Yi Chun unleashed his ultimate sword technique once more. This time, it wasn't just a single strike, but 3 consecutive sword strikes. With each strike, an ancient beast was slaughtered, and with 3 strikes, Yi Chun had directly killed 3 ancient beasts. After the 3 ancient beasts were slain, their entire bodies were completely obliterated by the restraining sword technique of the purple lightning, leaving not a trace of their divine power to escape. Clearly, Yi Chun, who had fully unleashed the killing power of the purple lightning divine sword, was now fully capable of dealing with such ancient beasts. Bam! 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 The constraints on the Eye of the Divine Sea broke 3 times more after the death of another 3 ancient beasts. The Eye of the Divine Sea, wrapped in layers of constraints, was becoming clearer and clearer to see. At that moment, on the earth below and in the heavens above, the remaining 96 ancient beasts were also struck by Yi Chun's thunderous methods, even experiencing a momentary freeze in the void. The next instant, they all roared towards the sky, and even their tails, which resembled those of a divine python, emitted piercing screeches. The desolate python divine lions, creatures with the ancient desolate bloodline, are known to grow stronger as the battle rages on, fighting until the very end. Although Yi Chun's methods had shaken them, it had also ignited their fighting spirit. Roar! 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 Amidst their roars towards the heavens, the aura of these ancient beast giants surged once again, and the 96 of them formed an encirclement, trapping Yi Chun within. After realizing they could not defeat Yi Chun one-on-one, they decided to gang up and attack him simultaneously. Surrounded by the 96 ancient beast giants, Yi Chun stood in the air, wielding the purple lightning divine sword. The fierce wind blew, whistling through Yi Chun's black hair as it fluttered in the air. Casting a glance at the Eye of the Divine Sea, where 4 constraints had shattered, Yi Chun pointed his purple lightning divine sword down and held all the true god talismans he had obtained from the main hall of the Icebound Temple in his other hand. Come then, let's engage in a true blood battle, Yi Chun called out to the ancient beast giants. In the next moment, Yi Chun and the desolate python divine lions, scattered in the void, all moved simultaneously. In an instant, the entire world was filled with the presence of killing intent. All one could hear were terrifying roars of the lions and the poignant whistling of the sword, echoing to the extreme. The true blood battle had begun. Amidst the pervasive killing intent, Zhang Yao, Thousand Extremes true god, and the little child could no longer see clearly what was happening in the battle. However, they all saw that as the battle against the 96 ancient beasts waged on, the constraints on the Eye of the Divine Sea continued to break. Enjoy exclusive chapters from novelbin.com. This indicated that Yi Chun was still slaughtering these ancient beasts. Even while facing the onslaught of the horde of ancient beasts, Yi Chun kept on killing. The only one who could see the specifics of the battle was Elder Kudu. Elder Kudu, a warrior of the sovereign realm, could not be obstructed by the light from such a battle. And as he observed the battle, Elder Kudu's heart stirred with tumultuous waves. He could see more clearly than Zhang Yao, Thousand Extremes true god, and the little child, of course, and had a clearer view of the situation within the great battle. In the midst of the battle, although Yi Chun was continuously slaying ancient beasts, his own situation was also quite dire. Facing the assault of dozens of incredibly powerful ancient beasts, Yi Chun too was wounded countless times. Even though he possessed the powerful physiques of the icebound divine body and the undying divine body, his body was covered in blood. After being lashed several times by the tails of the desolate python divine lions, which were akin to those of a divine python, Yi Chun even spewed out several mouthfuls of blood. But Elder Kudu saw that the hand Yi Chun used to hold the divine sword did not tremble or waver in the slightest. Despite his injuries, Yi Chun kept on attacking. This young man knows that he cannot show weakness or cease attacking, because the moment he stops, he might very well be dead the next second. This young man is now relying solely on willpower to sustain the fight. In the end, Elder Kudu could not bear to watch anymore. Like Zhang Yao, Thousand Extremes true god, and the little child, he too turned his attention to the continuously breaking constraints on the eye of the divine sea. His realm is still too weak. If it weren't for the power provided by the true God talismans, he probably would have exhausted his strength long ago. For this young lad to fight to this extent at the middle stage of the heavenly saint realm is already inconceivable. His combat power, even if placed within the divine kingdom, would be a match for those peerless geniuses. At the same level, even against geniuses cultivated by warriors of the sovereign realm, he is not at all inferior. It's unimaginable how powerful he will become once he raises his realm. I truly wish for him to go and cultivate in the 9 great divine institutes. If he does, the institutes might once again produce a divine venerable or even a sovereign. Elder Kudu thought to himself. In the midst of Elder Kudu's contemplation, he heard exclamations from little child and Thousand Extremes true God beside him. Another seal has been broken. Yi Chun has now broken a total of 85 seals. When Elder Kudu looked back towards the great battle, he could already see that only 15 of the desolate python divine lions remained in the battle. At this moment, Zhang Yao's heart was also occupied by various emotions such as pride, admiration, fear, and more. She was proud of Yi Chen's strength. She admired Yi Chun even more for being able to contend with ancient beasts nurtured by divine venerables of the divine kingdom with mid-stage heavenly saint strength, whose combat power had surpassed that of martial artists in the 9 calamities true God realm. And what she feared was that she couldn't keep up with Yi Chen's pace. Grandmother was right. I really need to follow her and cultivate properly. Only by doing so can I keep up with Yi Chen's pace and explore countless star domains with him. In the end, all such thoughts solidified in Zhang Yao's eyes, eventually turning into a resolute belief. Going to the 10,000 beasts domain, she must grow, both for Yi Chun and for herself. As Zhang Yao's eyes became firm, when she turned to look at Yi Chen again, she saw that in the space of the ancient tower within the light screen above the sky, Yi Chen's sword was siling down on the last ancient beast. Boom! With one slash, the ancient beast was dead. All 100 ancient beasts. As Yi Chun nearly exhausted all the true God talismans left by the icebound divine king in the icebound temple's main hall, were finally slain by him. Bang! And at that moment, the heavily sealed eye of the divine sea, its remaining restraints completely shattered and vanished, and the eye of the divine sea, as if sentient, flew directly towards Yi Chun in the void. Looking towards Yi Chun in the void, his whole body was already covered in bloodstains. His clothes were tattered, revealing the battle armor he wore underneath. But Yi Chen's eyes were radiating a confidence and determination that no one could ever forget. Holding the eye of the divine sea in his hand, with every step Yi Chen took, drops of blood fell, and at the same time, the wounds on his body began to heal with incredible speed. By the time Yi Chun walked out of the ancient tower, he had fully recovered to his original state. The 15th layer of the Undersea Divine Palace. True Phoenix and Mulan True God finally managed to get through the Slaughter Chess Game Guardian level of the 14th layer and arrived at the Pampoluo clan domain on the 15th layer, the 14th layer of the Undersea Divine Palace. Heavenly Saint Long Xian could no longer advance on this floor, realizing that her hope of acquiring the Eye of Creation and the Eye of the Divine Sea was utterly dashed. The 12th, 8th, and 6th layers of the Undersea Divine Palace. True gods and heavenly saints from the Divine Phoenix clan, who had been brought back from various parts of the 33 continents, like Palace Master Yuan Li and others, also stopped in their tracks, their faces showing a look of disappointment and sorrow. And then there were the 5th, 7th, 9th, and other layers of the Undersea Divine Palace, where true gods and heavenly saints who had not yet perished in the trials of the palace remained. All these individuals were filled with worry and despair. As the Great Purge calamity approached, they were all halted by various difficult situations, and upon hearing that the Eye of Creation had been obtained one by one ahead, they had nothing to show for it. They knew that the only outcome awaiting them was to be obliterated by the Great Purge calamity. Unless someone could obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea, only then could they be saved. But the Eye of the Divine Sea, the most precious treasure of the Undersea Divine Palace. Who could possibly obtain it? Just when countless heavenly saints and true gods were in despair, a voice echoed across all 33 layers of the undersea divine palace. The eye of the divine sea has been obtained by a martial artist. As this voice echoed across all 33 layers of the undersea divine palace, all the true gods and heavenly saints, including Heavenly Saint Long Xian, Palace Master Yuan Li, True Phoenix, Mulan True God, and many others stood up in disbelief. The eye of the divine sea has been obtained? Who could it be? All of them cried out in a thrilled exclamation. The acquisition of the eye of the divine sea meant that this person had saved the lives of everyone. How could it not make these martial artists ecstatic? The eye of the divine sea has been obtained. My God! This time the eye of the divine sea is rumored to be on the 32nd layer, a situation said to be the hardest to come by. In the past, it seemed like no one could obtain the eye of the divine sea on this layer. Who has managed to do it this time? Inside the undersea divine palace on the 14th layer, the rock giant divine king, whose massive body spanned more than 5,000 zhang, stood up from his seated position in shock. As he speculated about who might have obtained the eye of the divine sea, the rock giant divine king suddenly thought of someone, the young man who had once helped it solve the creation chess game, Yi Chen. Could it be young friend Yi Chen who obtained the eye of the divine sea? The rock giant divine king said with a thundering voice. It must be young friend Yi Chen. It has to be Yi Chen. In the end, the rock giant divine king asserted with certainty. Chapter 6:15 Supreme Divine Institute. Not only did the rock giant divine king stand up, but all the other lethal life forms on the various floors of the undersea divine palace also rose to their feet, their gazes turning toward the depths of the divine palace. The three brothers of the Pampoluo clan that Yi Chen had encountered also flew up from the sea, looking down below. Their guess was that the one who had obtained the eye of the divine sea was also Yi Chen. Meanwhile, the tens of thousands of sword cultivators on the 32nd floor of the undersea divine palace had already gone completely mad. They knew that the eye of the divine sea was within the giant sword. They clearly heard the mystical message emanating from the giant sword. The eye of the divine sea within the giant sword has been acquired by someone. These tens of thousands of sword cultivators were all wondering whether the eye of the divine sea was obtained by the 8 who entered first, or by the last ones to enter, Yi Chen and Zhang Yao. Among these tens of thousands of sword cultivators, the three-eyed skeleton and Qing Shuang true god knew that the one who had obtained the eye of the divine sea was either Zhang Yao or Yi Chen. How could it be those 8 who had entered long before and had not obtained the eye of the divine sea? At that moment, the 8 true god sword cultivators in the giant sword space, including the Baiming clan's chief and the Blood God clan's chief, were already greatly shaken when they saw Yi Chen and Zhang Yao disappear. They exclaimed in shock, "The eye of the divine sea has been acquired?" Those 2 friends just vanished. They must have entered a deeper space. Did they truly find the eye of the divine sea? The 8 of them could hardly believe it. Just as the outside world was boiling over with the news that Yi Chen had obtained the eye of the divine sea, within the desolate space, Yi Chen had already walked out of the ancient tower and approached Zhang Yao, Elder Kudu, Thousand Extremes true god, and the little child. Seeing Yi Chen come out, Zhang Yao threw herself into his arms. She looked at Yi Chen with tearful eyes, incessantly saying, "Yi Chen, you've succeeded. You really did it." Thinking of Yi Chen obtaining the eye of the divine sea, which could save countless lives. Thinking of Yi Chen using the reward from the eye of the divine sea to go to the divine kingdom and participate in the assessment for the 9 great divine institutes, Zhang Yao was overwhelmed with excitement. Yi Chen stroked Zhang Yao's waterfall-like black hair, smiling as he kissed her fair forehead. He could feel Zhang Yao's excitement and thrill, and of course, he himself was also positively elated. Seeing the closeness between Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, the nearby Thousand Extremes true god seemed to recall his past with Heavenly Saint Lianyu, murmuring in his heart, "Lianyu, once this great cleansing calamity concludes, I will be able to return. Discover more content at novelbin.com." When Elder Kudu saw the intimacy between Yi Chen and Zhang Yao, his eyes also flashed with a hint of yearning. He had turned to the Buddhist path and was practicing asceticism in the undersea divine palace to attempt to break through to a higher realm from the sovereign realm. But there was another reason for this, related to a female cultivator. While Elder Kudu was gently sighing to himself, Yichun had already led Zhang Yao to his side. Yichun asked Elder Kudu, "Senior, I have obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea. How should I use this treasure to protect others from the annihilation of the great cleansing calamity? Also, about the reward for the slot to participate in the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment in the Divine Kingdom, how do I claim it?" Elder Kudu, seeing the divine blue spherical crystal, Eye of the Divine Sea, in Yichun's hand, smiled and said to Yichun, "To protect others from the annihilation of the great cleansing calamity? That's quite simple. On the last day of the treasure hunt during the great cleansing calamity, all the living martial artists will be transported back to the first floor of the undersea divine palace. If someone has the Eye of Creation, they can leave the undersea divine palace directly with its help. If they don't have the Eye of Creation, the person who possesses the Eye of the Divine Sea simply needs to channel true chi into the Eye of the Divine Sea and shine it towards any martial artist, and that person will be able to leave the undersea divine palace safely. Of course, the one with the Eye of the Divine Sea can choose not to save others. However, those who have obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea previously generally helped everyone else leave, except their enemies."
Yichun nodded.
He had obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea, and certainly wouldn't use it just for himself. He would also help others escape the annihilation of the great cleansing calamity. However, given the miraculous use of the Eye of the Divine Sea, as described by Elder Kudu, Yichun immediately thought that he shouldn't release some heavenly saint true gods of the Flying Spirit Clan and the Vermilion Bird Clan that easily. Those from the Flying Spirit Clan and the Vermilion Bird Clan had genocidal enmity with Zhang Yao's Divine Phoenix Clan, with many responsible for the deaths of Divine Phoenix Clan members. He had already dealt with the old clan leaders from the Flying Spirit Clan and the Vermilion Bird Clan, but he certainly couldn't let the others who had invaded the Divine Phoenix Clan go. At this thought, Yichun exchanged a glance with Zhang Yao, and she understood what was in his heart. "All right, regarding the matter of using the Eye of the Divine Sea to save others, you can decide on your own when the time comes." Elder Kudu seemed to have noticed Yichun's conflicts with some heavenly saint true gods in the undersea divine palace, but as a being of the sovereign realm, he did not concern himself with the grudges among the juniors. Elder Kudu continued to speak to Yichun. "As for the slot reward for the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment in the Divine Kingdom you asked about, that is simple too. The quota reward is with me." Whoosh! As Elder Kudu spoke, a token engraved with the image of the 9-fold mountain range appeared in his hand. He handed the token over to Yichun. "With this token, you can directly participate in the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment. Take good care of this token. Should you lose it, you would miss this opportunity." "Is it this token?" When he heard Elder Kudu's words, Yichun took a closer look at the token in his hand. Then he promptly secured the token on his person. Since Elder Kudu mentioned that losing the token would mean missing the chance, Yichun certainly wouldn't allow anything to happen to it. At that point, Elder Kudu turned to Yichun and said, "Young man, although you have obtained the opportunity to go to the Divine Kingdom and participate in the 9 Great Divine Institutes examination, I have also witnessed your combat power. However, I still need to remind you that although your combat power, for your current Heavenly Saint Midstage realm, is exceptionally strong, even greater than those of the Divine Kingdom's top talents in the same stage, it's still not enough to smoothly pass the assessment of the strongest 9 Great Divine Institutes and enter one of them for cultivation. Because those you will be competing against are not the heavenly saints of the Divine Kingdom but the true gods of the Divine Kingdom, and they are very powerful true gods. Especially if you want to enter the most powerful Supreme Divine Institute among the 9 Great Divine Institutes, with your current strength, it is absolutely not enough." Elder Kudu's words made Yichun inwardly shiver, causing Zhang Yao's little face to tense up. Before Yichun could speak, Zhang Yao couldn't help but ask, "Senior, is the assessment of the 9 Great Divine Institutes very difficult? And the most powerful Supreme Divine Institute you mentioned, what level of combat power is needed to enter?" Elder Kudu said, "The 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment is a selection of disciples for the most powerful divine institutes in the entire divine kingdom. Many descendants of divine venerables don't even have the qualifications to participate in the assessment. Think about it, what kind of immense combat power would be needed to enter the assessment and stand out from the rest? From my experience back when I was in the divine kingdom, to ensure with absolute certainty that you can join one of the 9 Great Divine Institutes, at the very least, your combat power must be able to match and remain unbeaten against true gods of the 8th and 9th tribulations, who possess extremely formidable essence, chi, and spirit in the divine kingdom. In other words, even if you are to face the immensely powerful true gods of the 8th and 9th tribulations in the divine kingdom, you need to be able to match them in combat to have confidence in entering the 9 Great Divine Institutes." Elder Kudu's words made Yi Chun clench his fists as well. He knew that the geniuses nurtured by the powerful divine venerables of the divine kingdom were not as simple as the true gods of the minor spirit realm. Just like the 5 tribulations true god ancient beast that he had just battled, which was nurtured by a divine venerable from the divine kingdom, its combat power far surpassed that of the 9 tribulations true gods from the minor spirit realm. If even the 5 tribulations true god ancient beast was so difficult to deal with, reaching a level where he could defeat those immensely powerful 8 and 9 tribulations true gods in the divine kingdom would certainly be even more challenging. Even if he had the primordial star scripture, a secret technique not even possessed by divine venerables or sovereigns, he still had to cultivate the primordial star scripture even more deeply. Moreover, his realm was still too low. For a mid-stage heavenly saint to fight against the topmost true gods of the divine kingdom across different realms was clearly not enough. At least, he likely had to break through to the true god realm to have a glimmer of hope. After explaining the general situation of the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment, Elder Kudu mentioned, "As for the Supreme Divine Institute, it is the top institute among the 9 Great Divine Institutes. If you wish to attempt entry into this institute, you must not have any weaknesses at all. Real combat power, even strong enough to defeat ordinary lower god kings, is required to have a chance. To defeat an ordinary lower god king, one must know, divine kings are beings who can transcend the limits of one part of heaven and earth and enter the divine kingdom. Furthermore, it is said that after evolving from a true god to a divine king, the divine power inside one's body will transform, increasing their strength manifold. Such beings, let alone their explosive increase in strength, just the fact that they could rise from a star continent already ensures they are no weaklings. This challenge wasn't just about matching them in battle, but truly defeating them. Just thinking about it shows how difficult it would be. Luckily, Elder Kudu mentioned defeating the ordinary lower god kings. If one were to speak of defeating lower god kings reared by the powerful divine venerables in the divine kingdom, then the difficulty would be unimaginably higher. Young man, the Supreme Divine Institute, along with the various territory kings of the divine kingdom and even the current ruler of the divine kingdom, all emerged from it. It's the most profound among the 9 Great Divine Institutes. If you can enter there to cultivate, that's truly a marvelous fortune," Elder Kudu said with a sigh. "Senior, how much longer until the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment takes place?" Yi Chun inquired from Elder Kudu. If the assessment was scheduled to take place soon, then Yi Chun, with his current realm, might not have much hope of entering the Supreme Divine Institute. But if Yi Chun was given more time to further strengthen the 4th chapter of the primordial star scripture, then he would have some certainty of making a challenge. The 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment occurs 1 year after the end of the lower realm's great cleansing catastrophe. That is to say, you have just over a year to prepare for this major assessment, Elder Kudu said to Yi Chun. 1 year. Yi Chun felt a tightness in his heart. This time was too short. By the time he reached the divine kingdom, this time would almost be up. Chapter 6:16-9 Swords of Annihilation. Seeing Yi Chen's solemn expression, Elder Kudu looked at him seriously and said, "Young man, I have observed your battle with the ancient beast. Your physical skills possess the undying divine body, and although you have not fully cultivated it, this undying divine body would be considered absolutely powerful even in the divine kingdom. Your physical skills are not weaker when compared to the peerless geniuses in the divine kingdom. Your true chi technique, your special true chi, is the key to your ability to combat across realms. I too sensed a powerful and extraordinary force within it. Unfortunately, your realm is still far from sufficient. If you were able to break through to the true God realm, or even to the level of 2 tribulations true God or 3 tribulations true God, perhaps your true chi technique could also cross realms and battle with those true God heavens chosen in the divine kingdom. However, your divine soul skills are the weakest. I see you have not cultivated any truly formidable divine soul tactics. Hearing Elder Kudu's words, Yichun could not help but admire the vision of this sovereign realm powerhouse. He had directly seen the extraordinary nature of the primordial star scripture's primordial chapter stellar power that Yichun cultivated, as well as Yichun's insufficient realm and the weakness in his soul tactics. As for divine soul tactics, although Yichun had practiced them in the minor pole sky, his actual combat means only consisted of the destruction eye skills, which was a divine art from the minor spirit realm. If placed in the divine kingdom, it was, like many of the techniques he had cultivated before, somewhat insufficient. Indeed, as Elder Kudu pointed out, only Yichun's primordial star scriptures techniques and skills like the undying divine body and icebound divine body could still hold their ground in the divine kingdom. It seems that in addition to raising my realm, I need to continue cultivating several powerful skills, Yichun thought to himself. As Yichun pondered ways to make himself stronger, Elder Kudu sighed and said to Yichun, "Young man, being able to achieve what you have in the lower realm is already incredibly difficult. You can be said to be a true rare heavens chosen in tens of thousands of years. Since we are fated to meet, and I am presiding over the most precious Eye of the Divine Sea Challenge in the Undersea Divine Palace, besides the reward from the Eye of the Divine Sea, I will also give you 2 special rewards." Hearing Elder Kudu's words, not only did Yichun and Zhang Yao feel moved, but even the nearby Thousand Extremes True God and the little child turned their attention toward Elder Kudu. Elder Kudu, a sovereign realm powerhouse, was offering Yichun a reward. Without thinking, one knew how precious it would be. Seeing the eager looks of the few youngsters, Elder Kudu smiled lightly, turned his wrist, and a simple and ancient manual appeared in his palm. This 9 Swords of Annihilation manual is a Divine Soul category offensive manual, which, according to the Divine Kingdom's categorization of manuals, can be considered a top-grade, heaven-reaching divine art. Heaven-reaching divine art. Yichun had never heard this term before. He had only heard of heaven-reaching divine artifacts, which divine kings often used. Could it be that heaven-reaching divine arts were at the level of divine kings? Then why had the icebound divine king not left him any heaven-reaching divine arts? Seeing Yichun's puzzled look, the little child beside Elder Kudu spoke up first. Heaven-reaching divine arts are divine arts created by divine venerables or sovereigns themselves. Even many upper god kings don't have the chance to come into contact with them. And a top-grade heaven-reaching divine art can be said to be the strongest divine art that martial artists at the level of true God can cultivate. As for the mysterious heavenly divine arts, which are even more powerful than heaven-reaching divine arts, even martial artists with the combat power of true gods, if they exhausted all their power, could not perform a single move of the mysterious heavenly divine art. For you right now, they are not as useful as the heaven-reaching divine arts. The little child's words made Yichun draw in a deep breath. Heaven-reaching divine arts created by divine venerables and sovereigns, and top-grade heaven-reaching divine arts are the strongest divine arts that martial artists at the level of true God could cultivate. Enjoy more content from Novelbin.com. As for the mysterious heavenly divine arts that could drain all combat power and still not be performed, Yichun could relate deeply. When he used the purple lightning divine sword's prohibition moves, allowing the sword to exert the combat power of a heaven-reaching divine artifact, he could only use one move before his combat power was completely depleted. Such was the extraordinariness of heaven-reaching divine artifacts and divine arts. As for the mysterious heavenly divine arts, without thinking, Yichun knew that even if he were to exert all his combat power now, he likely couldn't activate them in the slightest. Such things were still far beyond Yichun's reach. unless he cultivated to the much stronger divine king realm. Hearing the little child explain, Elder Kudu scolded with a smile. You sword spirit? Sure are talkative. Elder Kudu's teasing scold made the little child also stick out his tongue playfully. Hearing Elder Kudu addressing the little child as sword spirit, Yi-chan came to understand the identity of this little child. Sword spirits are said to be born within the divine swords of exceptionally powerful sword cultivators, or are extraordinary beings absorbed by powerful sword cultivators into their divine swords to become sword spirits. Given that Elder Kudu could impart swordsmanship skills, causing numerous sword cultivators to emerge from the Baiming clan and Blood God clan, it was clear he had high attainments in the art of the sword. It was not surprising that he had a sword spirit. At this moment, Yi Chen's attention returned to the top-grade heaven-reaching divine art, 9 Swords of Annihilation, that Elder Kudu had just presented. Clearly, this was a form of swordsmanship divine art, and it belonged to the category of divine soul attack techniques, a heaven-reaching divine art. Seeing Yi-chan curiously examining the 9 Swords of Annihilation manual, Elder Kudu smiled and handed the manual to Yi-chan. This manual is the first reward I am giving you. Cultivate well, and if you can master the 9 Swords of Annihilation up to the 4th sword, then your divine soul means won't fear anyone in the assessments of the 9 Great God Institutes. Thank you, Senior. Holding the manual in his hands, Yi-chan gave a deep bow in gratitude to Elder Kudu. A heaven-reaching divine art and a high-grade one at that. Only a venerable practitioner like Elder Kudu could casually offer it. It was coveted by countless divine kings in the divine kingdoms. Naturally, Yi-chan was extremely grateful to Elder Kudu. Receiving a high-grade heaven-reaching divine art manual was definitely a tremendous reward for Yi-chan. Not only Yi-chan but Zhang Yao also deeply bowed in gratitude to Elder Kudu, thanking him on behalf of Yi-chan. Seeing Yi-chan and Zhang Yao, the 2 youngsters bowing in gratitude, Elder Kudu waved his hand and chuckled. Speaking of which, the second reward I have prepared is related to both of you youngsters. Bring out that pair of flying swords you displayed to my little disciple earlier. Flying swords? Yi-chan and Zhang Yao exchanged a glance. They had indeed displayed their flying swords when they first met Thousand Mechanism's true god, to encounter her. Unexpectedly, the second reward Elder Kudu mentioned was related to these flying swords. Could it be that Elder Kudu intended to help them reforge the flying swords? As Yi-chan and Zhang Yao suspected, they indeed brought out their flying swords. Yi-chen's flying sword, nurtured by the Void Heaven Sword embryo, had broken through to the divine artifact level, but it was still considered low-grade among divine artifacts. Meanwhile, Zhang Yao's flying sword had only been nurtured in the Void Heaven Sword embryo, while Yi-chan was by her side. Due to insufficient time, it was still originally at the highest grade of sacred artifact level. A low-grade divine artifact and a supreme sacred artifact. These are far from enough for you 2 youngsters, said Elder Kudu as he lightly summoned the 2 flying swords into the void, smiling. Let me enhance this pair of twin flying swords to the supreme heaven-reaching divine artifact level for you. In my martial arts cultivation technique, swordsmanship is supreme, and I still have plenty of materials suitable for reforging these flying swords. A stronger mysterious heavenly divine artifact level would be of no use to you right now. You wouldn't be able to activate it. It would draw too much attention, and might even bring about a major disaster. Indeed, as Yi-chan and Zhang Yao had guessed, Elder Kudu truly intended to help them reforge their flying swords. As for Elder Kudu's statement that a mysterious heavenly divine artifact could bring a great disaster, Yi-chan and Zhang Yao also understood the principle of not flashing wealth too openly, and they naturally did not harbor extravagant hopes of obtaining a mysterious heavenly divine artifact just yet. Regarding the materials mentioned by Elder Kudu, Yi-chan thought of something. With a big grab, the 5 thunder lightning bamboos that had once escorted him to the minor pole sky, obtained from the deepest part of the Ice-Fire Divine Cave in the 5 Elements Mountain, appeared in his palm. Senior, do you think these could be integrated into the flying sword? Thunder lightning bamboo? Elder Kudu's eyes lit up slightly at the sight of the 5 thunder lightning bamboos in Yi-chen's hand. This is indeed a fine material for forging flying swords. With this, in reforging your flying swords, I can even imbue them with the power of thunder and lightning, making your deployment of the flying swords even more powerful. Yi-chun, the 9 Swords of Annihilation manual I gave you works best when using a flying sword. Once I have reforged your flying swords, you will understand, he said. Hearing that the thunder lightning bamboo was useful, Yi-chun handed all 5 thunder lightning bamboos to Elder Kudu. As for Elder Kudu's remark about the flying swords being more formidable when deploying the 9 Swords of Annihilation, it became an unexpected joy for Yi-chun. Reforging the flying swords won't take long. You can wait for me here for 5 days, or go to the 33rd level to venture, and come back later to get your flying swords, Elder Kudu said to Yi-chun and Zhang Yao after taking the thunder lightning bamboos into his hands. When Elder Kudu mentioned the 33rd level, Zhang Yao suddenly remembered something. She hastily asked Elder Kudu, "Senior, are you clear about the situation on the 33rd level? Within the 33rd level, there are still the last 14 Eyes of Creation. Rumor has it that obtaining the last 14 Eyes of Creation will bring great benefits to a martial artist's cultivation, and gathering all 33 Eyes of Creation will grant access to something left by Lord Emperor Yen in the Undersea Divine Palace. Senior, do you happen to know what these 2 rewards are specifically? The reward of the 33rd level?" Upon hearing Zhang Yao's question, Elder Kudu's eyebrows twitched. Then he spoke, "I do know of both rewards. If someone could obtain those 14 Eyes of Creation from the 33rd level, they could have the opportunity to directly advance 1 realm. If either of you manages to get them, you could break through from the mid-phase of Heavenly Saint directly to the late phase without spending time on cultivation and preparation. As for the reward for gathering all 33 Eyes of Creation, that reward is indeed precious. However, the Eyes of Creation from the upper levels have already been secured. Unless you have some Eyes of Creation, there's no chance for you to claim that reward anymore." Chapter 617- Life Origin Wheel, 9 Spirit Sparrow. Upon hearing this, Zhang Yao let out a slight smile and said to Yi-chun, "I obtained the Eye of Creation from the 6th layer, and Yi-chun even got all the Eyes of Creation from the 14th and 21st layers. Now, we have also acquired the Eye of the Divine Sea. Naturally, all these Eyes of Creation can be gathered in Yi-chun's hands. As long as we get the Eye of Creation from the 33rd layer, we'll be able to redeem the reward for collecting all 33 Eyes of Creation. Yi-chun, this time, you won't refuse to take the Eye of Creation from the 6th layer again, right?" When Yi-chun and Zhang Yao met and talked about their respective experiences, Zhang Yao learned about the rewards for the Eyes of Creation from Yi-chun's description. Back then, Zhang Yao had planned to give the Eye of Creation she obtained from the 6th layer to Yi-chun. After all, Zhang Yao was cultivating with Mrs. He and 9 female divine venerables, and her future resources were certain to be plentiful. Yi-chun, on the other hand, did not have such resources, and naturally, Zhang Yao wanted Yi-chun to exchange for more treasures from the Undersea Divine Palace. However, Yi-chun did not accept the Eye of Creation from Zhang Yao because, after all, the Eye of Creation was needed to escape the annihilation of the Great Cleansing. Even Mrs. He could not help Zhang Yao escape the annihilation of the Great Cleansing directly. But now, with the Eye of the Divine Sea in hand, Zhang Yao was no longer worried about this. She definitely wanted to give the Eye of Creation to Yi-chun, and she didn't want Yi-chun to refuse. Hearing Zhang Yao's words, Yi-chun looked at her with doting eyes. This girl was always thinking of him. This time, Yi-chun did not refuse. He knew that if he refused again, Zhang Yao might be heartbroken. The 2 of them didn't need to be so clearly separated, so much of each other. "Let's first see what the reward for collecting all 33 Eyes of Creation is," said Yi-chun as he rubbed Zhang Yao's head and looked at Elder Kudu, wanting to hear from this sovereign realm powerhouse what the reward for gathering all 33 Eyes of Creation would be. Being stared at by these 2 youngsters and hearing Zhang Yao's words, Elder Kudu was shocked by them once again. The Eyes of Creation from the 6th, 14th, and 21st layers were all in the hands of these 2 youngsters. Elder Kudu had not expected that he had been unaware of the events that had happened earlier, and these 2 youngsters had managed to find all the most precious Eyes of Creation. Combining the earlier efforts of Yi-chun to compete for the Eye of the Divine Sea, Elder Kudu came to regard Yi-chun even more highly. You two little fellows have surprised me again, Elder Kudu said with a smile. Not only have you managed to reach this fourth space, but you've also gathered all of the eyes of creation in your hands. It seems that you really have a chance to obtain the reward for collecting all 33 eyes of creation. Elder Kudu didn't keep them guessing any longer and said directly to Yichan and Zhang Yao. As far as I know, the treasure left by Lord Emperor Yen specifically for collecting all 33 eyes of creation is called the Life Origin Wheel. The Life Origin Wheel? What is that? Yichan and Zhang Yao exchanged glances, both somewhat puzzled. The Life Origin Wheel is a treasure that many divine venerable realm and even sovereign realm powerhouses would leave for their descendants. This treasure is a time flow rate treasure that can be carried directly on one's person to constantly enter and leverage the time flow rate for cultivation. Of course, the quality of the Life Origin Wheel can vary greatly. Martial artists in the God King realm can even create Life Origin Wheels, but their Life Origin Wheels only allow martial artists to cultivate inside for a brief period before collapsing. The Life Origin Wheels created by Divine Venerables are much more stable, but cultivating inside with accelerated time flow rate can have a significant backlash, so one cannot cultivate for too long, and there must be a lengthy interval between each session of cultivation. The truly precious ones are the Life Origin Wheels created by those in the Sovereign Realm or higher. These Life Origin Wheels are incredibly stable and allow martial artists to cultivate to the utmost limit of their abilities, providing the strongest time flow rate level that they can currently withstand, 100-fold time flow rate. Additionally, Life Origin Wheels created by those in the Sovereign Realm or above have much shorter intervals between cultivation sessions, even allowing for direct cultivation inside for a month every year. The Life Origin Wheel is extremely difficult to create. I myself spent countless time and effort to leave behind 3 Life Origin Wheels for my clan members. In the Divine Kingdom, martial artists all wish to obtain a Life Origin Wheel to cultivate within, and the Life Origin Wheels created by those in the Sovereign Realm are especially designated for the most outstanding disciples to use. Zhang Yao, following Mrs. He in your cultivation, you will definitely enter a Life Origin Wheel to cultivate in the future. Yichun, among the martial artists you've met who will be participating in the assessments for the 9 Great Divine Institutes of the Divine Kingdom, virtually all would have entered a Life Origin Wheel to experience cultivation with accelerated time flow rate, and many of them would have certainly undergone cultivation in a sovereign-level Life Origin Wheel. I don't have a Life Origin Wheel here, but Lord Yen has left you a good thing. If you can obtain the Life Origin Wheel in terms of cultivation time, you won't be far behind those martial artists from the Divine Kingdom with significant backgrounds. Elder Kudu's words sent a shock through both Yichan and Zhang Yao. Having trained in a space with accelerated time flow before, they were well aware of the significance of this type of training for martial artists. Yichan had not expected that time flow rate training, which in the minor spirit realm and the lower realm's 33 continents was considered a grand opportunity, would be so readily available in the Divine Kingdom in the form of treasures one could carry at all times. Moreover, many martial artists in the Divine Kingdom were even constantly using such treasures for their training. No wonder the warriors of the Divine Kingdom were stronger. Imagine if one could enter 100-fold time flow rate for a month each year. That meant each year one would have over 8 more years of training than martial artists without such an opportunity. Even the descendants of divine venerable realm warriors, who could not enter 100-fold time flow rate, would still train for much longer than many others. The Life Origin Wheel. Indeed, it could save martial artists a significant amount of time, allowing them to enhance their cultivation within a different time flow rate without sacrificing their original time. Yichun, you must exchange for this Life Origin Wheel, Zhang Yao said urgently to Yichun after hearing about the great benefits of the Life Origin Wheel. I will be able to train in the Life Origin Wheel eventually, following Mrs. He, so don't worry about me. When we are in the 33rd layer, we must find the last 14 eyes of creation. Zhang Yao's words left no room for Yichun to demur, and he nodded in agreement. He was contemplating the Divine Kingdom's Great God Institute assessment that would take place in a little over a year. The warriors nurtured by the Divine Kingdom's divine sovereigns must have also trained in the Life Origin Wheel, and when they attend the Great God Institute assessment, they would surely be at their strongest. it was likely that there would be no shortage of powerful warriors who had reached the 8th tribulation's true god or even the 9 tribulation's true god. For Yi Chun to feel confident about joining one of the great god institutes and to compete with these most outstanding warriors, it was essential that he seize the opportunity to train using the life origin wheel. Otherwise, he would fall behind the footsteps of the Divine Kingdom's most exceptional young warriors. Already having trained within the Void Celestial Gourd at 100-fold time flow rate once, and with over a year left, Yi Chun could enter the life origin wheel for training at least one more time. With another session of training, he would gain over 8 more years of time. In preparation for the Great God Institute assessment of the Divine Kingdom, if Yi Chun could break through to the True God realm, he would have a certain level of confidence. Even breaking through to the 2 tribulations True God was within the realm of possibility. Combined with his most potent method, the primordial star scripture, as well as the undying divine body and ice seal divine body, and the recently acquired 9 swords of annihilation, competing with the Divine Kingdom's martial artists was not entirely hopeless. Seeing the expressions on Yi Chen's and Zhang Yao's faces, Elder Ku Du could tell that Yi Chun was truly moved by the life origin wheel. Elder Ku Du also nodded and said to Yi Chun, "Young man, if you seize that life origin wheel with your talent, perhaps you could shoot for the stars and try to enter one of the great God institutes, even attempting to join the number 1 Divine Institute, the Supreme Divine Institute. By the way, I will also tell you about what to expect on the 33rd layer. Lord Emperor Yen has never included the Eye of the Divine Sea in the 33rd layer because he wanted to give any warrior who might obtain it a glimmer of hope. In the 33rd layer, he left behind a kind of magical soul beast called the 9-spirit sparrow. For us sword cultivators, this soul beast can even be refined into the divine sword, causing it to transform into a sword spirit. What's more precious is that these 9-spirit sparrows were imbued with endless knowledge by Lord Emperor Yen, so they are incredibly smart. The more precious the 9-spirit sparrows, the more knowledge they possess, and the more secrets they know. For the warrior who obtains the Eye of the Divine Sea and later goes to the Divine Kingdom, having a 9-spirit sparrow by your side will be a significant assistant, helping you quickly adapt to the affairs of the Divine Kingdom without being completely in the dark. Yi Chun, Zhang Yao, you 2 youngsters, when you head to the 33rd layer to find the Eye of Creation, try to capture a 9-spirit sparrow each. It will undoubtedly be beneficial for your future. Especially for you, Yi Chun, if you want to participate in the Great God Institute assessment in the Divine Kingdom, you must get a 9-spirit sparrow to avoid being a stranger in a strange land, knowing nothing. As for the 9-spirit sparrows, they can be found on the Divine Flame Mountain in the 33rd layer. And at the base of the Divine Flame Mountain, there is a powerful entity that thrives on slaughter guarding it. If you get past the guardian creature, you can enter the Divine Flame Mountain and capture the 9-spirit sparrows. Having been brought into the 33rd layer by Mrs. He, Zhang Yao entered a mysterious void realm within it and was unaware of the existence of the 9-spirit sparrow. Upon hearing that the 9-spirit sparrows were extremely intelligent and held a wealth of information, Yi Chun became incredibly curious about them as well. The 33rd layer seems to have a lot of things to do: capturing the 9-spirit sparrow, finding the Eyes of Creation, exchanging for the life origin wheel. Your next journey awaits at Novelbin. Calm. Let's wait a few more days. Once Elder Ku Du finishes refining the flying sword, we will set off for the 33rd layer to make a thorough challenge in the last level of the Undersea Divine Palace. Chapter 618- Refining the Flying Sword Again. After settling the matters of the 33rd layer, Elder Ku Du directly began reforging the flying swords for Yi Chun and Zhang Yao. Meanwhile, Yi Chun and Zhang Yao didn't waste their time waiting, and they immediately began cultivating in this space. Zhang Yao, having trained with Mrs. He for some time, had broken through to the midway point of the Heavenly Saint realm and also cultivated the formidable foundation techniques of the Feathered Spirit clan. She continued to familiarize herself with these techniques. Yi Chun, on the other hand, continued to carve out stellar vortex space within himself to enhance his stellar power, while studying the top-grade sky-reaching technique, 9 Swords of Annihilation, a secret tome just handed to him by Elder Ku Du. In the blink of an eye, 5 days had passed. It was a thunderous storm that rumbled through the heavens and earth that awoke Yichun and Jiang Yao from their state of cultivation. When the two looked towards the void, they saw that the red and blue lights of the flying swords, which had been hovering in front of Elder Kudu since the start of the reforging process, had now turned into two fist-sized orbs of flying swords, radiating dazzling divine light. Surrounding the entire orb of the flying swords were strands of electrical sparks and swirls of stormy essence. The sounds that Yichun and Jiang Yao had heard came precisely from these orbs of the flying swords. Explore more stories with Novelbin.com. Neither of them had expected that reforging flying swords could cause such an enormous anomaly, and they were both somewhat shocked by the terrifying lethal power of the electric sparks and storm that surrounded the orbs. That thunderous electrical spark was very likely the phenomenon produced due to the incorporation of thunder lightning bamboo into the flying swords. And the fearsome storm was probably another kind of material manifesting its anomaly. As Yichun and Jiang Yao were sizing up these two orbs of the flying swords, Elder Kudu, who had been sitting cross-legged in the void reforging the flying swords, gave a slight smile and opened his eyes. The instant he opened his eyes, the two orbs of the flying swords exploded violently. Whiz! Whiz! After the two orbs of the flying swords burst open, two palm-sized flying swords were revealed within. These were even more mystical than the previous flying swords. The flying swords belonging to Yichun and Jiang Yao, Crimson Fire and Ghostly Water, were originally crimson and deep blue in color. Now they remained crimson and deep blue. But after being reforged, the red and blue light of these two flying swords had been enhanced countless levels. One could tell at a glance that they had completely transcended the ordinary levels of holy and divine artifacts and had actually reached the level of sky-reaching divine artifacts. What was even more miraculous was that Elder Kudu had inscribed divine patterns on the body of the originally plain flying swords. These patterns included shapes of lightning and storms, clearly possessing special attributes. While Yichun and Jiang Yao were examining the transformed flying swords, the two flying swords instantly burst upward towards the high void. When they shot up hundreds of yards high, the two swords shone like twin suns, casting endless divine light in the firmament, too dazzling to look directly at. This was the spontaneous display of the divine might of the flying swords after their reforging was completed. Only after more than a dozen breaths did the two flying swords finally retract their divine light, and then, as if sentient, flew towards their respective owners, Yichun and Jiang Yao. When they handed their flying swords over to Elder Kudu for reforging, Yichun and Jiang Yao had erased the sword's recognition enchantments. Both of them hadn't expected that, even so, their flying swords would still recognize them so familiarly. After catching the flying swords in their hands, Yichun and Jiang Yao began the process of re-acknowledgement. In the midst of it, they felt the stark difference in the quality of the flying swords. Before, one flying sword was a supreme holy artifact, and the other was an ordinary divine artifact, both limited in the amount of combat power they could withstand. In fact, if too much power was infused into them, the swords might have just collapsed. But now, after being reforged, Yichun found that, even if he channeled all his combat power into the flying sword, it wouldn't shake the quality of the sword in the slightest. Clearly, this top-tier divine artifact-level flying sword could withstand his attacks even if he had cultivated to the God King realm. As they carefully sensed every nuance of change in the flying sword, Yichun and Jiang Yao finally stored the sword away. The two of them gave Elder Kudu a deep bow. A flying sword, being a weapon of combat, was crucial to a martial artist's very survival. Elder Kudu had improved their flying swords to a top-tier divine artifact level, which was akin to giving them a great boost, and it might even save their lives in the future. Understandably, both Yichun and Jiang Yao felt immense gratitude toward Elder Kudu. At this moment, Elder Kudu simply smiled and waved his hand, saying to the two, "This flying sword, besides having the 5 pieces of thunder lightning bamboo you provided refined into it, I added another material called the Heavenly Wind Pearl. After the flying sword was re-refined, its quality reached that of a top-tier divine artifact. Moreover, with the addition of thunder lightning bamboo and Heavenly Wind Pearl, the sword has gained an additional sensitivity and enhancement to thunder and wind attributes." You will slowly understand once you use the flying sword. Elder, we cannot repay your great kindness and favor. If there's anything you need us to do, Zhang Yao and I will do our best to accomplish it, Yi Chun said to Elder Kudu. Elder Kudu had given him two major rewards, the 9 swords of annihilation and the re-refinement of the flying sword. Yi Chun wished to express his thanks to Elder Kudu. Yes, Elder, if you need anything done while cultivating here in the Undersea Divine Palace, Yi Chun and I could certainly handle it on your behalf. Zhang Yao also spoke up. You two youngsters are too courteous, Elder Kudu said with a laugh, shaking his head. I don't really have anything urgent. As he spoke, Elder Kudu seemed to recall something and looked toward Yi Chun. Right, young man, the 9 Swords of Annihilation manual I gave you, have you studied it in these past few days, and have you made any progress? Junior has indeed made some progress. Since Elder has already reforged the flying sword for Junior, then Junior shall give a demonstration, Yi Chun said. While speaking, Yi Chun directly summoned the Crimson Fire flying sword once again. Seeing Yi Chun take out the flying sword to practice the 9 Swords of Annihilation, Zhang Yao, Elder Kudu, the Thousand Extremes True God, and the Sword Spirit little boy standing next to Elder Kudu all turned their attention to Yi Chun. They all wanted to know to what extent Yi Chun had comprehended the 9 Swords of Annihilation after just 5 days. After a moment of connecting with the flying sword, Yi Chun abruptly opened his eyes, and the very instant he did so, the flying sword suddenly disappeared from the void. The next moment, on the distant ground, a boundless sword light explosively surged forth. This entire boundless sword light tore through the land and raised a furious storm in the void, within which one could sense that the storm harbored 18 vortexes. Looking into the vortexes of the storm, one could see the glowing silhouettes of 18 flying swords. The storm that shook both the void and the land was powerful enough to destroy heaven and earth. Seeing the violent destructive force of the storm and sensing the glow of the 18 flying sword silhouettes, Zhang Yao, the Thousand Extremes True God, and the Sword Spirit little boy were all deeply shaken. They couldn't understand how Yi Chun, with a single flying sword, could manifest 18 sword silhouettes, each as powerful as the previous 3rd banishment sword technique, Purple Lightning, of the Purple Lightning Divine Sword used by Yi Chun. That is to say, if Yi Chun were now to counter the ancient beasts with this technique, this single move could likely kill a great number of them. In just 5 days, Yi Chun's combat power had soared so dramatically, it was astonishing. Elder Kudu, who had personally reforged the flying sword and provided the 9 Swords of Annihilation to Yi Chun, was the most aware of all these changes. He too was surprised and exclaimed, "In just 5 days, young man, you've actually mastered the first sword Mountains and Rivers Chaos of the 9 Swords of Annihilation? Even with the flying sword you've just received, you can sense its changes and manifest its 18 sword phantoms. Your soul power is so strong." Chapter 619, The Commission of the Old Territory King. Elder Kudu couldn't help but be astonished. He knew even better than others the difficulty of cultivating the 9 Swords of Annihilation. This set of swordsmanship, even for him, took a full month to master the first of the 9 swords, and yet this young boy had mastered it in merely 5 days. This was a superior heaven-reaching divine art, not just an ordinary divine art. Elder Kudu was utterly shocked by Yi Chun's extraordinary comprehension power. As for the flying sword he had reforged, thanks to the quality being elevated to the level of a top-tier heaven-reaching divine artifact, it could even display up to 10,000 flying sword shadows. These weren't ordinary flying sword shadows. They were equivalent to the combat power of the flying sword itself. The true simultaneous release of 10,000 flying sword shadows was in fact the 9th sword of the 9 Swords of Annihilation. Elder Kudu had forged this flying sword specifically for Yi Chun, thinking that it would take some time for Yi Chun to get the hang of controlling the flying sword shadows, but unexpectedly, the first time Yi Chun used the flying sword, he successfully displayed all 18 flying sword shadows required for the first sword, Mountains and Rivers Chaos, of the 9 Swords of Annihilation. What shocked Elder Kudu most was Yi Chun's divine soul power. One must know that to display the first sword of the 9 Swords of Annihilation, which even had greater power than the previous Purple Lightning Divine Sword's third prohibition move, required an immense amount of divine soul power. Even Elder Kudu, back then, was only able to display it with sufficient divine soul power at the level of a powerful Six Tribulations true god in the Divine Kingdom. That Yi Chun was able to perform this first sword during the mid-stage of Heavenly Saint certainly astonished Elder Kudu enormously. Elder Kudu remembered that when Yi Chun used all of his combat power to execute that ultimate Purple Lightning, forbidden move, he was completely drained of strength. Only 5 days had passed, and now his divine soul combat power alone was strong enough to perform an even more powerful first sword of the 9 swords of annihilation. However, what Elder Kudu didn't know was that Yi Chen's divine soul power had already undergone a transformation in the minor pole sky. After his cultivation there, Yi Chen's divine soul power had not yet been fully exerted due to lack of a proper cultivation technique. Now, with the 9 swords of annihilation, his divine soul power could finally burst forth completely. Naturally, even with his divine soul power fully unleashed, Yi Chun couldn't truly activate the first sword Mountains and Rivers Chaos of the 9 swords of annihilation. However, during these 5 days of cultivation, Yi Chun finally realized the strength of the 4th chapter of the Primordial Star Scripture, Primordial Chapter. Previously, Yi Chun had been pondering that while the 3rd chapter of Primordial Star Scripture, Taiyuan Chapter, had not only the Taiyuan Divine Pill cultivation but also the cultivation of the 5 great divine arts, the 4th chapter, Primordial Beginning, only involved cultivating the stellar vortex space and stellar power. It appeared that although the stellar power in the 4th chapter was more terrifying, it seemed to have fewer methods than the 3rd chapter. But this time, when Yi Chen's divine soul power was insufficient to fully execute the first sword of the 9 swords of annihilation, he suddenly discovered that his internal stellar power could instantaneously turn into divine soul power, beginning to perform the first sword of annihilation. Only then did Yi Chun realize that stellar power was not ordinary true chi power. Even divine arts of the divine soul category could be performed with stellar power. This discovery greatly delighted Yi Chun. His own soul power was already strong, and combined with his stellar power, the sum of the two was simply enough to support the first sword of the 9 swords of annihilation, leading to another new breakthrough in his combat power. Powerful heaven-reaching divine art. Powerful combination of stellar power and divine soul power. This merging together directly provided Yi Chun with another fearsome trump card, different from physical skills and true chi techniques, a more mysterious and unpredictable divine soul attack method. After demonstrating the first sword of the 9 swords of annihilation, Yi Chun gestured grandly, and the 18 flying sword shadows instantly merged into the newly formed flying sword Crimson Fire, and flew back to his hand before finally being stored back into his sword palace acupoint. Only the land, stirred into wild chaos by the sword's killing force, remained behind, along with the dumbfounded expressions of Zhang Yao, Thousand Mechanisms True God, the Sword Spirit Little Boy, and Elder Kudu. Senior, this set of swordsmanship is indeed powerful. Did I perform it all right? Yi Chun asked Elder Kudu with a smile. More than all right. Elder Kudu, profoundly gratified, took a long breath, his eyes shining as he looked at Yi Chun. Yi Chun, my boy, over the years, I intentionally let my swordsmanship flow out of the Beiming Divine Sea to let the Beiming clan and the Blood God clan cultivate it, but they never satisfied me. Now, in you, I am completely satisfied. It seems that entrusting the 9 swords of annihilation to you was the right choice. Back in the day, it wasn't until I reached the Divine King realm that I completely mastered the 9 swords of annihilation. Now it looks like you might fully comprehend this heaven-reaching divine art even in the true God realm. The praises Elder Kudu gave to Yi Chun shocked Thousand Mechanisms True God and the Sword Spirit Little Boy by his side. They had never heard Elder Kudu lavish such praise on someone before. Clearly, Yi Chun had won Elder Kudu's approval with his absolute strength, and when Zhang Yao heard the praise Elder Kudu had for Yi Chun, her beautiful eyes were filled with smiles as well, and holding Yi Chen's hand, she gently tightened her grip. Little youth, when I asked you to practice the 9 swords of annihilation, there indeed lay an intention to test your heart. Earlier, you said you wanted to help me with something. I was thinking, if you could gain an understanding of the 9 swords of annihilation within 5 days, I would entrust you with a task. Unexpectedly, you went beyond just grasping the basics and even successfully cultivated the first sword. It seems that I must indeed ask you to complete the task, Elder Kudu said, looking at Yichen. Senior, whatever you instruct, just say the word, Yichen said to Elder Kudu. Elder Kudu smiled. It's not really a big deal. I have been cultivating in this undersea divine palace for many years and have some insights into cultivation that I want to pass on to my clansmen. The strength you displayed just now gives me great hope for your entry into the 9 Great Divine Institutes. Yichen, when you participate in the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment, if you encounter young members from the Divine Kingdom's Southern Territory Mu King Mansion, give this law bead to whoever performs the best after the assessment is over. As he spoke, a fist-sized blue bead appeared directly in Elder Kudu's hands. Yichen took the blue bead emitting a faint, misty light and said solemnly to Elder Kudu, Senior, I will carry out your instructions. But aren't you worried, Senior, that I might keep the bead for myself? Also, what if I cannot attend the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment for some reason, and I don't get to meet anyone from Mu King Mansion to give them this bead? Wouldn't this be a waste of your efforts? Yichen expressed the doubts in his heart. He would certainly help Elder Kudu complete the task. Yet Yichen couldn't help but ask about these uncertainties. Hearing Yichen's words, Elder Kudu smiled. Yichen, I trust your character. Besides, this cultivation technique is different from the 9 swords of annihilation. It is only suitable for the bloodline of the Mu King Mansion clansmen to practice. Others will only find disadvantage rather than benefit from it, so I'm not worried it will be misused. As for your concern about being unable to attend the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment, if the clansmen from Mu King Mansion miss the chance to receive this bead, it's not a big issue. With these words from Elder Kudu, Yichen reminded himself even more to fulfill the entrusted mission. Having received significant help from Elder Kudu, he naturally sought to repay the favor. Seeing Yichen's earnest expression, Elder Kudu knew Yichen's thoughts. He smiled, and as if thinking of something, he moved his palm again, and another bead, similar in size to the earlier blue one but purple in color, appeared in his hand. Elder Kudu held the bead for a few moments before slowly opening his palm. Finally, he handed the second bead to Yichen. Explore hidden tales at Novelbin. Calm. Yichen, the second purple bead. If in the 9 Great Divine Institutes assessment you encounter the young generation from Southern Territories, Divine Miao Peak, do as you would with the first bead. Give it to whoever performs the best in the assessment, Elder Kudu said softly. At the same time, Elder Kudu felt a sense of melancholy in his heart. Millions of years have passed. I wonder how she is doing now. But Divine Miao Peak will definitely stand unshaken even after tens of millions of years, perhaps even stronger than when I was there. Yichen looked at the blue and purple beads entrusted to him by Elder Kudu. The first blue bead, Elder Kudu said to give it to someone from the Divine Kingdom's Southern Territory, Mu King Mansion. Yichen guessed that the Mu King Mansion must be Elder Kudu's family. As for the second purple bead, Elder Kudu instructed to hand it to someone from the Divine Kingdom's Southern Territory, Divine Miao Peak, which Yichen was clueless about which sect or power it might be. However, he presumed it would also have significant ties to Elder Kudu. Recalling that the family of Ice Seal Divine King from the Southern Territory had his 3 true god guards including Bing Wu, Yichen felt that even though he had not yet been to the Divine Kingdom's Southern Territory, he already shared countless ties with it. All right, young man, I've said all I needed to say. Now, you and little Miss Zhang Yao should go ahead and challenge the 33rd floor of the Undersea Divine Palace. Remember, each of you must catch one 9-spirit sparrow and strive to catch the most precious one. As for the life origin wheel, if you can collect all 33 eyes of creation, don't miss the chance, Elder Kudu added finally. After Elder Kudu had spoken, the Thousand Extremes True God and the Sword Spirit Little Boy also began to bid their farewells to Yichen and Zhang Yao. They all knew that the time for a real farewell was approaching. The Thousand Extremes true god might have the chance to meet them again, but for the sword spirit little boy and Elder Kudu, who knew when they would meet again. Yi Chun and Jiang Yao bowed respectfully to Elder Kudu and then stood up. After exchanging a glance, they turned their gaze toward the deeper part of the undersea divine palace, the last and only remaining layer of space. In this 32nd layer, they had conquered 4 spaces, obtained the most precious treasure, the Eye of the Divine Sea, gained the opportunity granted by Elder Kudu, and accepted the tasks he entrusted to them. Now it was time to challenge the final layer. Chapter 620 Divine Flame Mountain. In the giant sword space, the chieftains of the ancient clan and the Blood God clan, along with 6 other true god sword cultivators, were still inside the modest temple, staring at the meditation cushion, incense table, green lantern, and Buddha painting. 5 days had passed. Ever since they heard that the Eye of the Divine Sea had been obtained, a full 5 days had elapsed. During these 5 days, they had been waiting for the 2 companions who had suddenly disappeared to reappear. The longer they waited, the more anxious they grew. The original excitement of hearing that the Eye of the Divine Sea had been found turned into fear and worry. From the Undersea Divine Palace's Explorer badges, they knew that the one who found the Eye of the Divine Sea would have the ability to save everyone from the great cleansing cataclysm. However, if the person who possessed the Eye of the Divine Sea was unwilling to save others, then the rest could only perish in the cataclysm of the Undersea Divine Palace. The 8 true god sword cultivators were fearful that if the 2 companions who most likely had obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea chose to ignore them, then they would still die within the Undersea Divine Palace. They also worried that the 2 who had acquired the Eye of the Divine Sea had encountered accidents. Such fears and worries couldn't be avoided even by the 2 8 tribulation true gods, the chieftains of the ancient clan and the Blood God clan. As the 8 people spent a full 5 days in worry and fear, and waited in the temple for the same duration, they suddenly saw a divine light, as shocking as the heavens, burst forth from the ancient Buddha painting hanging on the temple's upper wall. Following that, 2 figures landed beside them. Who else could these 2 figures be? If not Yi Chun and Jiang Yao, who had previously vanished inside the temple. Seeing Yi Chun and Jiang Yao, the 8 people were overjoyed and rushed over to them. The chieftains of the ancient clan and the Blood God clan were particularly anxious as they asked Yi Chun and Jiang Yao, "Fellow Taoists, did you 2 obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea?" Jiang Yao looked at the 8 true god sword cultivators and said with a slight smile, "Yes, Yi Chun has found the Eye of the Divine Sea." Hearing Jiang Yao's words, the 8 true god sword cultivators felt as if struck by thunder. They felt a tingling on their scalps and looked at Yi Chun anxiously, even stumbling over their words. "Fellow Taoist Yi Chun, fellow Taoist Yi Chun, you must use the Eye of the Divine Sea to save our lives." How could these 8 people not be nervous? Even the chieftains of the ancient clan and the Blood God clan, both 8 tribulation true gods, would have no other choice but death if Yi Chun did not save them. Such a fate, naturally, made them nervous. To wrest the Eye of the Divine Sea from Yi Chun's hands? Forget the fact that the Eye of the Divine Sea had already chosen its master upon being found. Even if it hadn't, those who could obtain the Eye of the Divine Sea were these same 2 people who had made it to the 32nd level. Without thinking, one would know how formidable they were. To snatch the Eye of the Divine Sea from their hands would likely result in a premature death, even more certain than the great cleansing cataclysm. The only thought of the 8 was to form a good relationship with Yi Chun, fulfilling any high demands he might have. Yi Chun looked at the 8 nervous true god sword cultivators before him, smiled and said, "Don't worry on the last day. When the Eye of the Divine Sea can be used to save you, I will save you." Boom! 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 Yi Chun's words were like long-awaited rain after a drought, like thunder in a heavy rain, instantly transforming the 8 people's nervous, worried, anxious, and fearful hearts into ecstatic joy. They were saved. This fellow Taoist Yi Chun, without demanding anything from them, directly agreed to save them. How could this not fill them with immense joy? In the end, even the ancient clan and the Blood God clan, who had been mortal enemies until now, All pressed towards Yichun, and the chieftains promised that if Yichun ever needed anything done, their clans would spare no effort. After all, their lives were saved by Yichun. This great grace was truly beyond compensation, something they must forever remember in their hearts. The chieftains even thought to themselves that upon returning to their clans, they would tell all their clan members to remember Yichun's great grace. The owner of the Eye of the Divine Sea deserved such respect. Let's go. It's time for us to leave as well. After smiling at the 8 excited true God sword cultivators, Yichun took Jiang Yao's hand and flew out from the giant sword space. Outside giant sword space, within a hidden small space of the Undersea Divine Palace's 32nd level sea of 10,000 swords with tens of thousands of sword cultivators. Just like the 8 true God sword cultivators in the giant sword space, tens of thousands of sword cultivators outside the giant sword space had also been waiting beside the giant sword, waiting for the 10 people who entered to come out, waiting for the one who obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea to emerge. Their 5 days of waiting had made them equally as anxious and nervous. And the next moment, when the giant sword emitted endless light, these tens of thousands of sword cultivators saw Yichun and Jiang Yao, the last to enter the giant sword, accompanied by the 8 true God sword cultivators who had entered before them, flying out from the sword. Upon seeing even the chiefs of the Baiming clan and the Blood God clan exhibiting the utmost respect towards Yichun and Jiang Yao, it was clear to the 8 true God sword cultivators. It didn't take long for the tens of thousands of sword cultivators to realize that these last 2 young people to enter the giant sword were the ones who had obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea. And when Yichun, smiling, took out the Eye of the Divine Sea and told the tens of thousands of sword cultivators that he would rescue them, they all erupted into joyful cheering, with many even shedding tears. In the crowd, the 3-eyed skeleton and the Qing Shuang true God were muttering to themselves, "It's really Yichun. It really is our friend Yichun who has obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea." An hour later, continue your adventure at Novelbin. Calm. Inside the deepest 33rd layer of the Undersea Divine Palace, Yichun and Jiang Yao stood in this new land, exchanging smiles. "Yaoer, it's a good thing we made a quick escape. Otherwise, we really wouldn't have been able to withstand that fervent enthusiasm from the tens of thousands of sword cultivators," Yichun said to Jiang Yao with a smile. After Yichun and Jiang Yao left the giant sword space, especially after Yichun announced that he would save these sword cultivators, they were so eager to repay his kindness that they would have given him their all. Many sword cultivators even rushed to Yichun's side, inviting him to visit their homes after leaving the Undersea Divine Palace, promising to treat him well. In the end, seeing that both Yichun and Jiang Yao were beginning to frown, the chiefs of the Baiming clan and the Blood God clan hastily managed to quell the overly enthusiastic sword cultivators, finally allowing Yichun and Jiang Yao to reach the 33rd level of the Undersea Divine Palace. Jiang Yao also recalled the previous scene, and she too smiled lightly. It's not their fault. Freeing themselves from a catastrophe like the Great Cleansing, it's natural for their hearts to be greatly stirred. The 2 of them discussed what had happened earlier, then turned their attention to this new realm on the 33rd layer. "Yichun, now we only have this last layer to venture through," Jiang Yao called out to Yichun. Yichun clasped Jiang Yao's hand tightly, looked over the land of rolling hills and said, "For this last layer, let's search this realm thoroughly, and then find the 9-spirit Sparrow clan and Divine Flame Mountain that Senior Kudu spoke of." After exchanging glances, the 2 began to fly around and search within the space of the 33rd layer. After Yichun and Jiang Yao reached the 33rd layer, Mrs. He and the 9 goddesses hidden in the deepest reaches of this layer's void boundary also turned their attention to Yichun and Jiang Yao. They were unable to observe the situation of Yichun and Jiang Yao at the Elder Kudu's place due to the peculiarity of his realm. However, when the news of the Eye of the Divine Sea's acquisition spread throughout the 33rd layer, Mrs. He and the 9 goddesses knew it must be Yichun and Jiang Yao who had obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea. Now, seeing Yichun and Jiang Yao arrive at the 33rd layer, Mrs. He's eyes revealed a smile. This young man Yichun is truly worthy of being the young man Yaoer is fond of, indeed formidable. It seems we must meet him before we leave, she said. The 9 goddesses also smiled. The young man that Yower likes. We indeed must meet him. Beyond the void boundary where Mrs. He in the undersea divine palace 33rd layer resided, deep within the endless mountains, was a divine mountain emitting towering flames of divine light. This divine mountain was none other than Divine Flame Mountain, where the 9 spirit sparrow clan left behind by Lord Emperor Yen, as mentioned by Elder Kudu, was located. Looking down towards the Divine Flame Mountain, one could see gigantic beasts carrying long trident-like weapons, guarding this Divine Flame Mountain. Looking up towards the Divine Flame Mountain, one could see young girls in green gowns leaping about, and on their fair foreheads, you could glimpse mysterious divine marks that appeared and disappeared. Every so often, one could see these girls in green gowns transform into giant green sparrows, soaring over the Divine Flame Mountain. Far from being affected by the divine light of flames, it seemed to greatly benefit these green sparrows. Many of the birds would open their mouths to swallow whole flames of divine light thousands of feet long. At the highest point of the Divine Flame Mountain, 2 girls were sitting in meditation. Surrounded by many green-gowned girls, these 2 seemed to command utmost respect from them all. At this moment, one of the 2 girls, who appeared to be around 11 or 12 years old, looked at her slightly older companion, around the age of 14 or 15, and asked, "Sister, is the person who obtained the Eye of the Divine Sea from the Undersea Divine Palace's 32nd layer about to come to the 33rd layer?" The older girl smiled gently and answered, "Schwanger, that person has already arrived on the 33rd layer." Upon looking at all the shapes of the green-gowned girls and the green sparrows, it was evident that, whether in human form or sparrow form, the green divine marks on their foreheads varied from one to another. Some had 3 divine marks, others 5, and some even 7. However, among all of the sparrows and girls, only these 2 seated at the peak of Divine Flame Mountain had 9 divine marks adorning their fair foreheads.